All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for coming tonight. We're at about 6 o'clock, so I just ask everyone to start taking their seats. We'll just start off with a short presentation here. For those who don't know me, and I've come to learn that my reputation doesn't always precede me, so forgive the introduction. But my name's Sean Ranke. I'm the mayor here in Paynesville. I've served in this role since this is my third year. Whatever the math is, it's hard on a Friday night. So we're here tonight. Just wanted to give a short presentation before I turn it over to the folks here from Nature Energy on what is going on with the city level from a city government perspective. What does the permitting process look like? What's happened so far? And just give kind of a brief overview on that. And then once I'm done, we'll turn it over to the Nature Energy folks. They have some stuff to share with you. And then by all means, we have a microphone up here. There's going to be one that's passed around as well, and people can ask questions as we go through. So I just want to start a little bit tonight with, Jeremy, would you mind helping me by backing up one? We did test it. So a little bit of a history of how everything got started here. This gentleman on the left is Tariq Al-Rafai. He's our city administrator. He came to us in December of 2020. He has a long history of economic development in other parts, founding the Quorum Center for something. He can correct me later as to what it's actually called. But he's done a lot of economic development work, and we brought him into town to really work that angle of our city and help develop things. Last year, Tariq sat in on a presentation by the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development, or DEED, D-E-E-D, and heard from representatives from Nature Energy and what they do and what kind of their operation looks like and what they need. Tariq reached out to them and said, hey, we're a small rural town. Is this something that might work for you? They came out here, we met with them a little bit. They identified a site, which is on the north side of town, known colloquially as the Furchie property. So, a little bit about this land. Have a backup. There we go. So, why hasn't this land been developed yet? Well, the city knows of a few things that have happened so far. We know that we've tried to get housing in there. We've tried to do some industrial. We've tried to do some retail, some truck stops. It hasn't panned out. Not saying there's not more, but these are the ones we know about. Why hasn't it panned out? One, the land cost. Land is expensive. Two, building materials. I don't think any of us are immune to what's happened during COVID with the cost of building supplies. If you go to get a 2x4 at Menards, it costs 4 times what it did 4 years ago. It's a lot. So building costs have gone through the roof. But most of it comes down to, and what's the saying in real estate, location, location, location. Here it comes down to infrastructure, infrastructure, and infrastructure costs. Roads are expensive. That property is undeveloped. Putting a road in costs a lot of money. And people who are doing perhaps low-income housing or market force housing might not have the capital that they need to lay out in order to do the infrastructure. So what's gone on with the city to date? We started a little bit back, like I said, in late last year, sitting down informally with representatives, talking about what does Nature Energy do, why are they looking at Paynesville, and frankly, from a city perspective, asking why we want a poo plant in Paynesville. Because why do we want that smell? Why do we want all of that stuff? And doing some preliminary work. And these are things that are done with some regularity. Developers will come in, they want to meet with elected officials and see what's available out there. For example, I sat down a few weeks ago with some residents who want to do or are looking at possibly doing a housing project. These are things that go on regularly. Representatives from Nature Energy came to the City Council on November 30th, talked to us publicly during one of our working sessions, sort of explained what they did. There were a few write-ups in the local press that I had put in a mayor's column. I know the minutes from our meetings showed it as well in the paper. And then in March of this year, we sent a delegation to Denmark in order to do a site inspection, because I can hear something from someone, but we wanted to see it with our own eyes, smell it with our own nose, and really verify what had been said. So 2 council members, Megan Brick, Neil Herzberg, went to Denmark along with our city administrator, Tarek Al-Rafai, and our city engineer, Chuck DeWolf. That money was paid for not by taxpayer dollars, not by Nature Energy. It came out of the city's Economic Development Fund. So that's a separate stash of money that's not hit by the tax levy. That's where it came out of, because this is something to help grow our economic tax base and things like that. They toured the headquarters facility, operational, non-operational plants, and they inspected facilities outside of the prescribed tour. So Nature Energy put together a tour itinerary and said, here's where we're going, here's what's happening. And we talked internally and said, don't. What is it like when you bring guests over to your house? You show them the rooms that you cleaned, and you shut doors that you don't open. At least I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, so that's how it works at my house. If I don't show you what's behind a door, please don't ask to look. So, but they got a car, they rented a car, and they drove to a facility off the tour, talked to residents of that neighborhood, looked at the facility from what they could see. They couldn't get inside because it wasn't obviously a scheduled tour, but they took a look at it, talked to people, and got an inside opinion. While they were there, they saw a plant. Looks a lot like that over in Denmark. You can see it's a cobbled parkway. Everything sits on that. Members were there, heard from the facilities, saw the trucks coming into and out of the facilities, saw how the manure is evacuated from the trucks, saw how the trucks are independently cleaned, saw the negative air pressure that would take the air from the outside, pull it up and out of the building so that that smell doesn't come out into the public. And we're able to verify the things that Nature Energy was telling us. So they came back. We talked to them at our next city council meeting and said, tell us what you learned. What did you see? And the consensus among all of them was unequivocally, we didn't see anything over there that would give us pause about putting something here. So we said, okay, Nature Energy, let's keep talking. Let's see what this looks like and what's the process from here. So, now what happens? First of all, I want to say and reiterate that public input at all stages of these processes is welcomed and encouraged. Again, public input is welcomed and encouraged. I don't care if you're for it, against it. You might have something to say that I haven't thought about, and I'm always open to changing my mind. So where do we go from here? Right now, the land needs to be platted. That's step one. Platting takes this vacant lot that's just a big open parcel of farmland, turns it into a subdevelopment like this one here. Yes, I blocked out people's addresses. It's public information, but you can see where I live. I don't care. From there, there's going to be a preliminary plat. There will be a public hearing associated with that. So that will be published. It will be noticed. Public will be welcome to come in, take a look at the plat, and give feedback. There will be a final plat with a public hearing again. That process takes at least 6 months from the date of application. To the best of my knowledge, unless they submitted something today, no plat application has been received. So this hasn't even begun yet. So we're 6 months once that comes in and it hasn't started. Then the land would need to be rezoned. Right now, the colors aren't showing well on the screen, but it's zoned as an agricultural district. So we need to take a look at our zoning in our city and what would fit if this is what we were going to do out there, and replat this and probably turn it into an industrial development. The rezone process. Again, there's going to be a public hearing from the date of application. They have 60 days from the date in order for it to be completed. It's still not done. Then there's a city conditional use permit. An opportunity for the city council to take a look at everything and say, okay, what conditions do we need to put in place on this plant to really protect our area? And here is where any feedback that we get from the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency or other state agencies is going to become vital. Because these are the things that the city does. These are the things where we have public input locally. But there's a whole environmental process through the MPCA and other state agencies that we can't control, that we don't have the means to. I can't call the state and tell them what to do. Those of us who have tried usually hang up that phone in a bit of anger. So, but we will look at the MPCA reports, the environmental impact studies, things like that, and look at those things as we develop a conditional use permit. That process, again, 60 days from application. There are mechanisms within the law, I won't get into the technical details on this, where we can extend those things by agreement. I suspect that we would probably end up doing that just so that we can do sufficient notice to everyone. What are some of the common questions that we've been hearing so far? There's a group of them that's kind of related to notice. Why haven't I heard more? Why hasn't this been in the press? And when does the city have to notify me? These are valid. So I'll tell you right now, this has been, I mentioned it in the press in my Marist column at least, I think I went back and looked about 4 times starting back in February, talking about this being out there. It was referenced when the write-ups came in as to this has been discussed, talking about going on the trip to Denmark, and Councilmember Brick did a very nice article on what she observed when she was in Denmark when she came back. One of the things I like to say is that we live in a country where in 1776 we said we're going to be free from Great Britain, and one of the things that we said after we formed our Constitution about a decade later is we don't get to control the press. So that means that Mike gets to write whatever he wants to about me, and I don't get to tell him what to write. And I see him cheering in the back there, and I'm happy, because I don't want that power, I don't need that power. But then the questions get into more of logistical concerns. Do we have the water capacity? What about the truck traffic? So I've been going around, I've been talking to some people, and I mentioned it earlier. I said I'm not too big to admit when I've been wrong. I've been comparing the nature energy usage to a couple of our big industrial users. One is AMPI. And just for some understanding, what nature energy would use in 1 year is about what AMPI uses in 1 month. And I don't say that to pick on AMPI. They're a great asset to our community, but just to help you understand what that water usage looks like. Our Public Works Director, our City Engineer have both looked at our water capacity and are confident that we can meet that need. Where I say I have to apologize is I've compared AMPI's usage to Avon Plastics as well. That is outdated information on my part. Avon Plastics is no longer up there. It is much lower now than it is before. So, but about 1/10 to 1/12 of what AMPI uses in a month, they would use in the same period of time. The truck traffic, about 90, 95 trucks a day. I'll let them speak to numbers. And I'll talk a little bit more when we get to some of the conditional use permitting materials on how we think the truck traffic can be abated. Isn't this just a done deal? Haven't you guys already made up your mind? No. No. Platting, zoning, conditional use permit. There's a lot that needs to happen here. This is not a done deal. Not at all. This is not going to be greenlit tomorrow. The speed of government, y'all, ain't fast. It's not fast. So this is not a done deal. Public input is welcomed and encouraged. Please reach out to us, and I'll have information later. So why do we want it? Why are we looking at it? One, diverse job creation. This is a new type of job that we don't have in our area right now. Spurs development of that property. Remember what I said about infrastructure costs? There's nothing out here. This is barren, vacant land right now. On the west side of the property is a dead-end road that used to connect over to Bork Lumber before the bypass came through. I said, let's talk about the truck traffic. How might we handle that? One idea that I think we should look into as part of the conditional use permit, we require that a road be put in. Please don't take this as an architectural or engineering drawing. This is something I did in PowerPoint in 3 seconds. But we recommend that a road be put in. Why? Because it means that trucks coming into this facility would come off of 23 onto Lake Avenue. They would take this road into the property, back out onto 55 and back onto 23, or vice versa. So they wouldn't be coming through our downtown area. They wouldn't be coming into the city. Everything would stay north of the railroad tracks. Environmental benefits. There are only so many dead dinosaurs in the ground that we can pump out before we run out of dead dinosaurs. We have to keep looking at other things that we can do. And then there's an increase to the tax base that is kind of hard to explain, and not explain, but visualize, in part because we can't value the property, and I'll talk about that as well. But a quick primer on city budgeting. We have three basic budget components in the city. We have our local government aid, that's set by the state. We have revenues that come in from park fees, permit applications, anything like that where you pay money into the city, that comes into the budget as well. And then there's the tax levy that the city council sets annually. Last year, tax levy was $1.129,054. After the city council took a look and we spent weeks and weeks trying to figure out where we can cut and where we can hold back to minimize an increase to the levy, we levied a total amount among all of the taxpayers within the city, $1.1 million. That levy gets divided among everyone who lives in the city or everyone who owns property in the city, be it a business, a residence, whatever, proportionate to the type of business and their property value, things like that. A misconception, and because it just doesn't always make sense, but new builds don't equal new revenue. That levy is what the city generates in tax revenue. If somebody builds a house, we don't get extra monies from that, other than the permit fees, but it means that that levy is distributed amongst a bigger pie. So then your individual slice of that pie becomes smaller, or there's more to go around because there's just more there. For example, I took a look at some of our neighboring communities, and I apologize if this is hard to read. Cold Spring, there's the Pilgrim plant, and there's the Cold Spring Brewery with that massive facility out north of the town. Of Cold Spring's total tax levy, Pilgrim pays about 5% of that levy with their property taxes. The Cold Spring Brewery right now pays about 2%. And I thought that's really low for that building. The difference is that the Cold Spring Brewery received what's called tax increment financing. So they're paying a lower property tax for a number of years in order to spur that development. And that's something that we've done with various projects around town, not being proposed here. So this number for the Cold Spring Brewery, expect that to go up in a number of years. But two businesses in Cold Spring pay 7% of their entire city tax levy right now. Avon, the Blattner building, 12% of their total levy. Columbia Gear, about 5%. Again, I'm an attorney by trade, not a mathematician. Did the math. I asked our city staff to check it. It's probably pretty close, but don't hold it to be exact. So these two businesses pay 17% of the city of Avon's tax levy, which means that the residents aren't eating that up. They're not paying in that amount. There's more pie to go around. So, how is this going to affect Paynesville? It's too early to determine the tax value of the building. We've been working with the Stearns County Auditor's Office, with the property valuation people, trying to determine roughly so that we can spitball. It's hard to estimate until we can see some more exact drawings. That's why I look at other cities for comparison. But Nature Energy has told us, and I'm going to hold them to this, that they are not looking for tax increment financing. Unlike the Cold Spring Brewery, which is getting a reduced tax rate to build, Nature Energy has told us they don't want that. They've also told us they don't want tax abatement, which is similar but works a little bit differently. So that means that the full value of that building, whatever it comes in once it's constructed, goes on the property tax rolls, takes out the amount of value from everybody else, reduces everyone's share because there's more to go around. I said there's going to be public hearings and that I want you to be heard. How do we do that? There's a number of ways. You can write to or you can call us. I'll tell you, I'm best if you email me and you give me like 3 days to respond, because life's been nuts right now. I'm not trying to blow anybody off. I know I have at least one voicemail from somebody I've seen in the audience tonight that I haven't responded to yet. I'm not trying to blow anybody off. I'm just trying to stay afloat right now. So, best for me is to shoot me an email and know that I will eventually get back to you. You can send comments to city staff. We'll read them at the public hearing. They'll get introduced into the record. We've done that recently. You can come to a public hearing and you can offer some testimony. We've recently enacted some rules not relating to this. It came from an earlier meeting where we say we're going to give people about 3 minutes. And that's so that everybody can be heard in a reasonable time and we're not here until 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if any of you have seen the Parks and Rec show with their public hearings that go on and on. Let's bring a little bit of order to the chaos sometimes is all I'm trying to say with that limit. We're not trying to stifle people, but just help bring some order to it. Finally, at every single one of our council meetings, we have a public forum. 10 minutes are available. If anybody wants to come in and talk to us about whatever is on their mind, we'll give you up to 10 minutes. We'll divide that among however many people are there to speak, 2 of you, 5, 4 of you, so on. We won't take anything up, we won't act on it, but we can refer things to city staff as might be appropriate. So just know that if you come to a public forum and we say, okay, thank you, we've heard your comment, now we're gonna think about it and get back to you at the next meeting, we're not ignoring you. It's just with the way things work, we have to go through the proper channels before acting on it. And who do you contact? And this is all on the city's website as well, but if you wanted to write it down now, you can call or email me. My phone number and email are up there on the screen. Again, email is generally preferred. Our council members, our city administrator, we're all here. We are elected to serve the residents of the city of Paynesville, and that's what we do. I like to think that we take that obligation seriously and that we put a lot of thought and work into the things that we do. We don't take things naively. We don't look at it and take things for what they're worth. But we are looking at how can we help the people of Paynesville and do things that are good for the community. So I want to go back to just one thing and make it perfectly clear. Is this a done deal? No, it's not. Personally, I so far am supportive of this idea. From what I have seen, from what I have read, from my discussions, I think that the safety concerns are valid, but they can be appropriately mitigated. Does that mean you can't change my mind? No. I changed my mind like 3 times almost during every council meeting about something. So let's have the conversation. You might be thinking about something that I haven't thought of before. But let's do it, let's chat, let's figure things out. We are a community. We can work together as a community. Folks, that's all I have. I'm going to turn it over to Nature Energy now. They'll answer your question. They have a short presentation as well. I'll let them introduce themselves, but they'll come up on stage. So thank you all for being here. Like I said, they will have questions, or you can ask questions. They will answer them for you. And then I think if you have any for me, I'll be around and I can certainly come up and chat, but I'm going to turn it over to them now. So thank you all very much.
No? Yeah, I want to be a rock star. This is for tour. All right. Thank you very much. I need to get used to this light here. I'm not used to that. Thank you for showing up. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for the signs. Friday, 6 o'clock, very impressive. And we are here to tell about Nature Energy and what we like to do here in Paynesville. And we have staff here with me to help various questions. So a short presentation with 2 films and then a lot of Q&As, hopefully. So just to introduce Nature Energy, myself, I can start, of course. My name is Jesper. I'm a Dane. I live here in Minnesota now with my family. I work as a business developer and has been working very closely with the city so far and moving various projects in both Minnesota and Wisconsin forward. And I'll pass this on to Bob.
Thanks, Jesper. So my name is Bob Lefebvre. My role with Nature Energy is to work with the dairy farmers, which makes up the vast majority of our feedstock, dairy manure. My previous experience, basically my entire professional career, has been working in the dairy industry. 16 years as Minnesota Milk's executive director, and then most recently with Dairy Research and Promotion prior to coming on board with Nature Energy. Actually, it's been a year. Last July I started.
Okay. Yeah, hello, my name is Matt Bruette, and I will be working with Bob to work with the farmers to both procure the manure and to return the digestate to them and work with them on finding the best use for it. Prior to starting with Nature Energy just this January, I've been working as a certified crop advisor in Stearns County, some Morrison, some Todd County, primarily with dairy farms, small, medium, and large. And my focus has always been on sustainability, and I feel like Nature Energy is it was a good segue to work with Nature Energy. So anyway, I'll be here to answer any kind of agronomic questions that I'm able to answer that you might have.
Hi, my name is Mark Tuso. I'm a consultant for Nature Energy, and some of you may know me as the whistleblower who filed a lawsuit against the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, where I worked at for 29 years because they weren't doing enough to protect your groundwater. That was a success. There's been some movement now to try to clean up your drinking water here, but my background is I'm a hydrogeologist. I've worked on a whole variety of things, Enbridge pipeline, cleaned up refineries, fish kills, you name it. So I got a lot of experience with that. So if you guys got any environmental questions along those lines, I certainly can answer those for you. And I just want to let you know that I'm actually retired from the state. So I'm just doing this part-time because one of the benefits I have now is I can work on things that I think are important. And I really think that this is an important project. And I really hope we can provide you information, help you understand the overall environmental benefits of this, because this will clean up your drinking water and your surface waters.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just helping a little bit with the technical stuff. My name is Thor. I work for Nature Energy, and as the only one here, I work out of Denmark. So we built a lot of plants already in Denmark, so I'm here to make everything we did successful in Denmark come over here in the same successful way. Denmark is a heavy regulated country. We're used to working with that and doing everything clean and nice in Denmark, and that's the same way it should be here, regardless of the regulation you actually have here. And I'm the one who toured all the people here from Painesville and back in Denmark in March.
Okay. Also, thank you, Sean, for the introduction. I would like to say also that there's no deal done yet. We actually have a long way ahead of us, hopefully together. Yeah, so let's get started here. So Nature Energy, a pioneer to the green transition. Oh, there we go. So I have a little agenda here, and please bear with us. I mean, this is the first time we do it, but it will not be the last. We are planning to have some online session as well, and there will also be an open house at, I believe it's going to be at the City Hall in the end of the month. So we're also practicing here. So a little introduction to, very short, about what is biogas, and moreover, who are we? Who are Nature Energy? Who's going to be your good corporate neighbor for hopefully many years? Our business model, how is it working? And also about the Painesville project, of course, very, very important. That's why we're here. A few examples on how they look like. We haven't done anything in the US. We have 14 in Denmark. And some of the economic benefits and also next steps, what is involving, and so on. Yeah. So biogas is coming off organics, manure and other organics we co-digest. And it has, out of that, biogas, we have about 65% methane gas, which is the same gas, the fossil gas that we take off the ground that we now can use for heating and food, but it will be sustainable, as someone pointed out. Eventually, we will not be able to pull out the dinosaurs anymore. And then we also have 35 to 40% CO2 and all other small gases. So the CO2 we take off. In this case, we will sell them off for Jennie-O, where the turkey manure comes from, and Jennie-O will use that CO2 for freezing as well as killing the bird. So it's a lot about sustainability, reuse the things. We do that in an anaerobic digestion. That means in these big tanks there's no air, so all the manure with all the organics, the bacteria are taken off the methane gas. That was very brief, and yeah, we can answer all questions about that. So who are we? I have a little film, and that's where Tor comes in.
The green transition is now. We've already come a long way, and we will go even further. At Nature Energy, we take the waste that nobody really wants and converts it into green biogas and green fertilizer. We send agricultural waste products, biological industrial waste, and your food waste into our facilities, which provide green fertilizer to farmers and green biogas for the energy that our society needs. This is energy that can be used as well as stored, thereby reducing environmentally damaging emissions and benefiting our world as a whole. Biogas isn't just used to heat your home, it can also help transition industry from black to green. Add to this the future possibilities relating to jet fuels and the potential transition of the entire transport industry. In fact, you can already ride on buses fueled by biogas from our gas stations. The use of biogas is steaming ahead, and we will accelerate that development domestically as well as internationally and on a massive scale. Our ambition is to play a pivotal and active role in the green transition of the global energy consumption. We've gone from a small biogas plant in Denmark to many large-scale plants. We have our own state-of-the-art laboratory, and we're also operating plants internationally. We're already world-leading, but we need your help. We need to sort and send biological waste through a biogas plant so that together we can create green value from our biological waste. We are Nature Energy, and our solution is pivotal to the green transition.
Thank you, Tor. Sorry. Yeah, so a little bit of history. I'm not going to go into details, but our company started called Naturgas Fyn, which means nature gas Fyn. That's the island where we have our headquarters. It started in 1979 as a municipality-owned distribution, just like Centerpoint, for example. And to just do a few pinpoints, so Ole Velblund started here in 2013. He's also our CEO today. And he started the whole journey here with biogas. Of other major points, we bought Exagear in 2018. They were building all our plants, so we brought them in because Nature Energy is actually a fully develop, build, own, and operate company. So it's not like we're coming here to build something and then run away. We will stay here and operate the plant as well. And of interest, of course, is that we have 14 large-scale plants in Denmark, and that's a new slide. And we got acquired by Shell, and they took over ownership here in February, and we are doing integration with them now. Yeah, so that was a little bit about our history. Numbers, so we do about 7.2 million MMBTU. So that's not really a whole lot of gas, but it's a whole lot of renewable gas. So that makes us a fairly large player, and also some that leads the way, and we can talk to big companies selling our gas and our credits. We have a fairly extended pipeline. Oh shoot, what happened now? Yeah, sorry. We have a fairly extended pipeline, not only here in America, but also in Canada and also in Europe. We deliver plus 30% of the gas in Denmark. And just to give you an idea about the transition in Denmark, that in 2026, the entire gas consumption will be by renewable gas. So no more fossil fuel at that time. And we are about 400 people, actually close to 500 now in Denmark. Yep. More key figures, as I said, 14 large plants in Denmark. We also have fueling stations for CNG gas. And we convert 4.4 million tons of organics into fertilizer and take off the gas, of course. And yeah, 7 million MMBTU. And that gives about this, the same as 8,000 trucks annual driving. Here you see a picture of our plant in Korsko. That's our flagship, so to say. It's the largest we have. It can handle 1 million tonnage. And the white over here, that's where we take off the CO2. And those CO2 bubbles are put into the breweries in Denmark. So when you have a beer in Denmark, you know where the bubble comes from. Large-scale plants, this is, of course, to make it all financially feasible. And that means for us between 0.5 to 1 million tons a year. That, of course, is a lot of trucking. There's a reason for that. So we are centralized. That means that we bring in the manure and bring back the digester to the farmers or the crop growers. And by doing that means that we can actually serve small farm as well as large farms. So this is nothing to do about being big. Another thing about being centralized and meaning having the trucks is that there's a huge advantage for farmers that, for example, they have the manure at the farm, but they can actually get the fertilizer, the digester, delivered at the cropland, which could be miles away. So there's a lot of savings in that for both for the farmers and for the environment. Standardized design. This not only makes it more efficient, it makes it less costly, and you know, error and learning is much easier. So we do co-digesting, which means we take manure together with other organics. Manure really don't have that much gas, but it has the excellent environment for the bacteria to have their life. And bacteria, like human beings, if they're too skinny, they die. If they're too fat, they cannot work enough. So they have to be perfect. And we do that with manure and other organics in order to have maximized output, because that means benefits for everybody in this section. All our gas goes to pipeline. In this case here in Paintsville, we will have to build another, you can call it town station. It will be a little bit more, north from the existing town station on the Northern Natural Pipeline. And then we have in our headquarters in Odense, we have a centralized competence center, so we learn from our mistakes. As I said earlier, we are fully developing, build, own, and operate. So what we build, we also have to operate. And when we operate it, we know what's good and what's not so good, and therefore we can also make some very sound and product that actually works and not break down. Yeah, so we also a nutrient factory. Do you want to say anything about that? Okay. So we have people who can answer questions about the nutrition and what we have in the manure. When I said co-digested, that means in theory we're just borrowing the manure from a farmer and bring it back again. But since we're co-digested, we will have a surplus. And also the manure that the farmer gets back has a higher nutrients value, so there will be a more surplus. That we like to bring out to crop farmers, and thereby the crop farmer will save fossil fertilizer, which you all know comes from all over the world, Russia and so on. So it's not about bringing extra nutrients into Painesville, actually it's the opposite. We use the nutrients that we have in the neighborhood, and not using the fossil fertilizer or substitute. And we cannot substitute all of it. We also have a what do you call that? It's mentioned as being the largest lab in the world when it comes to the business that we're doing. So we work together with a lot of universities around the world. Of course, Odense University, there was somebody here who was from Odense University or had at least worked there once. We also work with Stanford and Cambridge. There's a lot of universities we work together with, and we have a lot of internships from the school, the local school. Our business model, in a way, is fairly simple. It's you have the facility here, so we bring in the organics, we take off the gas that goes to the pipeline, and we take the nutrition back to the fields again, and then it gives this circularized economic. And here you see it in the large scale. So over here we have our model. The gas goes to pipeline, and the CO2 is taken off for either we can do what we call a methanization, and then we can make even more natural gas or more methane gas, and the beauty about gas or natural gas is that it can be stored, where wind and sun will produce electricity, and we all know that the batteries are good, but they're not really good. And the way we see it now, when we get further down the road, I don't think you want to ride in a plane with heavy batteries. I think it's more safe to do it with a liquid fuel that you can store. Large scale. So this is basically, that explains that. We will pick up the organic material within a certain radius. Here it says 20 miles. That is give and take. You can say average. So if we will not go 40 miles to pick up manure, because you basically spend too much energy, and moreover more time and more roads. So when we come here to Painesville in Stern County, we have of course checked if we have the feedstock in the area, and we do. So therefore we go further with the project. And maybe I can also mention here that a facility like this, we spent out of the 100% energy, so the 0.7 million MMBTU, we spend about 20% for the production of that to heat up the digester and other things on site, and about 1.5% is going to transportation. So what we do here is 4 to 5 times up in energy value. So as you can see, that is worthwhile, that we don't spend too much producing the green stuff. Yep. Here we have one more film. It's a little bit older, and let me warn you, in the end there's the old website and there's a Danish phone number. Do not call that. What I'd like you to pay attention to here is, this is about how we operate. It's a Danish film, and what we do, we call it the Nature Energy Model. And here in America, it will of course be the Nature Energy Model in American context. The American context, super important. We are here, we're not in Denmark. Pay attention to the truck, pay attention to how clean it is, and why is that? That is because we clean the trucks, and also the arm with the chute. Please.
Plenty of sustainable energy and improved fertilizer turn slurry from our suppliers into a valuable resource. Slurry from agriculture can be used in the production of biogas. The slurry and manure is retrieved following a fixed schedule. A text message advises the supplier, such that he may lead the slurry to a pre-tank or start the agitator. Simultaneously, the degassed fertilizer is returned to the supplier's own tanks, or the neighbor's if he needs it more. The degassed fertilizer hardly smells at all, which is a very positive characteristic for all. the biogas facility, the slurry is weighed prior to unloading in closed buildings. A sample of every delivery is made, and in the laboratory, dry matter and organic dry matter is measured. When the slurry is unloaded, the truck is loaded with degas slurry, which is then returned to the supplier. The truck is cleaned to avoid exchange of microbiology between the farms. The supplier's slurry is more valuable after processing in the biogas facility. The ammonium content is measured in the degas slurry prior to delivery to the supplier. Many plant breeders also use degas slurry, which gives a better yield through higher ammonium content, improved infiltration ability, and highly reduced washout compared to untreated slurry. It eases the supplier's workload considerably, but the biogas facility is also capable of handling deep litter. On top of this, the supplier also receives a much more homogeneous and higher quality fertilizer back. Membership of the Cooperative of Suppliers to the biogas facility has several advantages to the suppliers. They convert manure and waste streams into sustainable energy, and the degassed mix of biomass is a considerably better fertilizer. That is sound economics. Become supplier to one of our existing or coming biogas facilities. Learn more.
Yep, thank you, Tor. Yeah, so here, now we saw how we operate, and that we clean the trucks every time it comes into our facilities. And here you can see also that's where you unload the raw manure, and when it's done, you simply take the arm over in the other chute and suck up the digest, and then the truck goes off again. So all our trucks will be running full all at the time, so no empty trucks, being more efficient in this sense. Yeah, and here's just a more schematic about it. So you being out by the farmer, picking up the manure. So basically at a farm today you will have a stall. The manure goes to the lagoon. We'll install a reception pit here. We need fresh manure. Fresh manure is considered, oh no, what happened now? Fresh manure is considered maximum 7 days old. And then we take it back to the facilities, unload it, and bring it back to the storage for the farmer, and then pick it up. And this logistic is very important for an efficient operation, and we're quite good at that. We use local drivers. Local drivers know the neighbor and has a tendency to drive more carefully. We will not accept hazard driving. We have a dictated routes, so you can kind of call it an extended Uber version. Yeah, and local drivers. That's super important. Basic local is a very, very key word of what we do. So this is the expectations. This is a classic US manure transportation with an open lid. And I believe this picture is showing that they turned right, both of them, and then the manure went over, as you can see, and down on the car. And that, of course, you'll not have in our trucks because they'll be fully enclosed all the time. Yep. So, Paintsville, here we are. Now the interesting stuff. First of all, we have just launched our new website. It's a common website now. Before we had, for the other projects we had done, we had, for example, for Benson, we had benson.natureenergy. Now we have a us.nature-energy.com, and here you can see there's where all the projects we are ongoing. So right now we have Sauk Center, Paintsville, New Richmond, and on the website there'll also be a possibility to ask questions to us, and we aim to answer within 48 hours. It's not to beat you, Sean, but 48 hours, that's what we're trying to do, and please use that facility. All the question that comes in, we might use them for frequent asked questions, which is also going to be on the site. It's just opened yesterday, so it will be built up during the process here. But for example, this could be one of the slides on our website where you can see a Nature Energy facility. This one here is from Benson. I don't know if you're familiar with the old Fiberman plant, but that's where we intend to be. And then we have all these numbers here, and with hopefully a good explanation, also with data. We can, for example, take the stack. That's always something we discuss. Up here, there's also an airport. So the stack is, where is it? I can't see it from here. Number 7, right? So if you see here 7, biofilters. So these are 2 active coal filters. So all these buildings are under pressure, and that air is being sucked out for these buildings, is taken to these active coal filters and cleaned off, and then the rest of the smell, so to say, is going up to 197 feet. So it will go in a good distance, so you can't smell anything. So in the buildings, of course, there's smell, but right outside the building, there is what do you call it? It's an industrial plant, but it's not. I mean, it's not even as on a farm or anything like that. Yeah. So here we are on the, and this is where I would like to Tor now to. Maybe you want to take it from here, Tor?
Thank you. Yeah, so I guess you know your city better than I do, even though I've done a lot of the mapping in Denmark to see where we should be in terms of where the different stuff is. So it's been nice to be here a few times now and see the city in real life instead of just on a Google map or Google Earth. But yeah, so this is where the site is, and looking towards the city to see the distance. Here's the plant layout, and as Sean talked about, we want to go out on either that road that he puts there that will go across to the sites behind it and then come out to a thing called Lake Avenue and then go north. So all the trucks will go out on that big highway, so you won't have them in the city. As you can see on this map, sort of the things that are put in there is the wellhead restriction area, and it's the shoreline with the DNR, and the plant is put in to not touch any of that because we don't want our sites inside these areas, and you don't want them there either, so we agree on that. I've seen comments on Facebook and other places about how noisy we are, and just wanted to show you. So this is data from Korskro, which is that I put on top of your site, because we'll do all this stuff here as part of the permitting project, but just to show you a worst case scenario. So this is the worst case calculation from Korskro. So these are actual measurements. It's not in a planning phase. This is how it was measured when the plant is fully operational. That plant is 25% bigger than what we plan to do here. And just to show you, so 50 dB between the green and the blue, that's conversation as we're having it now. Outside here, it's even lower. And the decibel scale is a logarithmic one. That means that 45 dB is 5 times lower than 50. I mean, I'll challenge you to hear this factory anywhere in your city. You're not going to hear it. You got other stuff that's closer that is way more noisy and will make no noise in the city. I don't know the regulations here in Painesville. I tried to look it up but couldn't find it. I know in Wisconsin the rule is below 50 in residential area and below 60 in industrial areas. But we are far below that, as you can see. What about odor, as Jesper talked about? We do all this with the negative pressure in the building. Every time a truck comes, the door is shut, it will go up, it will go down again as soon as the truck is in. Yeah, negative pressure, so air is always sucked in if a door is open. Again here, I put some data from Korskro, the world's largest plant, 25% smaller. On top of that, Korskro has an 82 feet stack, and this is where the data is from. The stack here will be more than twice that high. In Denmark, if this plant was out, let's say out here in the field, you would be allowed to have a house inside the red circle, mean on site, inside the facility. That will be allowed by Danish regulation because it smells so little. If we compare it to residential area, we would be allowed to have a house here between the yellow and the green, that is below the regulations we have in Denmark. And as I said, this facility is going to be 25% smaller. The stack is going to be more than twice that high. Everyone who knows something about air permitting, I mean, when you make the stack much higher, you get a lot more mixing, and any residual odor will go much further away. So again, you will not smell this in your city, and you can ask the people that went on the tour how the Danish facilities were. Traffic, of course, is also something we are always thinking about, and we don't bring a lot of trucks, but I mean, every time a company will come to your city, and if they will add trucks, like one day it's one too many, right? So this is something we are taking very seriously, and it's something that we always do traffic studies on, regardless of whether it's required or not. A lot of places it's actually not required, but we always do it to be able to answer your questions. This traffic study has not been done. We are not that far in the process, as Sean talked about. It will be, of course, shared also on the website as soon as it's done. This is just a look at how your traffic is today. So there's around, as I said, the trucks will come out here, go here. They'll go west and east. They need to go, most of our trucks, they need to go out to the farmers for the manure. So around half of them needs to go east. So they will go out on roads and then go north, go out north. We have 25 that need to go out this way east. 10% will go out down here and down here south. And this is the part that we need to figure out, but maybe 15% will need to go this way, so there'll be 15 trucks every day on weekdays, and lower on Saturdays and none on Sundays. And if you look at that in terms of the traffic you have today, it's an increase in traffic on 1.5% here and 0.3% on this one on weekdays. So that's what we're looking into, but the traffic study will show all the details. But this is just to give you the best data we have today.
So, just about the stack. So it's not a smoke stack. It's for a door only. It's very slim. Okay. Yeah. Just a few typical renderings. Yeah, it's the classic view that we have. The colors are chosen by architects, so it's supposed to be eye-friendly. Clearly, we all have a taste, but they will. I think the people who went to Denmark here from Paintsville and also others, they always tell us that for an industrial facility, it looks quite modern and clean. We are put a lot of effort in being clean because we human beings, we have a tendency to smell with the eyes, so to say. Here's another rendering from the same, actually, seen from the other end. And we try to, or we will, put a dirt beam up around it and put plants, of course, so we can match in. And I'm very excited about the site that we found here so far, if we can get that through, because there's a lot of greens around it. And I think it's going to be a very beautiful site when it's fully developed. Here is from the Benson site. This is the old Fiberman receiving. So what you see our digesters here in the back, so you have if you know that building, you kind of have the feeling also how high things are compared to each other. This is a big building, don't get me wrong, and our digesters are also fairly big. You have the data on the other slide I showed you. And which one is this? This is, yeah, the same Benson again here, seen from another angle, so you can see completely identical. So that's the standard design. This is down from Wilson. We did not go further with this one because we have first done drillings to see if the site was okay. Those first 8 drillings showed okay. And then we did 70 drillings to do the design, and we found out that some of the cast was too high. So we simply said that we cannot be here, it's not safe. So in that area, we're looking for a new site, and that is going on as we speak. Just to underline that we not building anywhere, it has to be suitable, otherwise we can't do it. Same again here, seen from the road. And another one real quick. Okay, so next step. So this is this presentation here is also what we go out with when we meet communities at the first time. And I'd just like to tell you the way we see next step, and also will tell you where we are in the process, the way Nature Energy sees it. As I mentioned in the beginning, we still have a long way to go. So economic benefits for you guys, for the community, and we will provide, give and take, 12 to 16 local jobs. That be 5 to 6 plant managers and people on site, not maintenance people. Maintenance people we will hire in locally, but they'll be supervised by some of these 12 to 16. And all those services, maintenance, etc., is giving approximately 65 to 75 jobs. Now, all these numbers you see here is out from a Danish report. We are working on a US report as we speak, but I'm very comfortable with these numbers because a salary and so on are pretty much the same. And so those figures. And us coming to town will generate a GNP on $15 million. So that's everything that these 75 people plus the 12 to 16, pizzas, gas, most hotel, everything like that will generate additional turnover for the city of $15 million. And our aim here, and I would like to thank you for mentioning that actually, Sean, that we want to be that good corporate neighbor. We want to match into the local community, build, develop, build, own, and operate. And we want to be here and operate, and we want to be that good corporate neighbor. We're not asking for any TIF or whatever it's called, or any tax abatement. We want to pay our share to be part of the community. We also like to have a scholarship, for example, for the high school here. All our facilities, our site office is built as a classroom, so we can receive classes for this, for example, for the STEM education, and yeah, be in that active role. And we actually encourage you guys to see if there's any way we can support you. That could be a Nature Energy shirt on a sports team, or it could be a food collection program, or anything relative to what we do. So we are very eager to hear if you have any suggestions. So next steps, we have a gate model, and we start at gate 0. I always say that I really don't like that number, because what is a 0? But that's basically where we find the project and define it, check out feedstock, and talk to the council members. Are we welcome at all? I mean, if you got 7 council members say, nah, that's not a good idea, guess what? We probably not going to proceed it, right? And also basically checking gas pipelines, if they can take the pressure, all kinds of engineering stuff. And then we come to gate 1. That's where it's become very interesting, and we're just about to do that here in Painesville. So gate 1, that's where we push and write the first big check for consulting. And we've done a little bit of consulting on feasibility studies and so on before gate 1, but that's when we start hiring consultants for all the permitting work. And when I say MPCA, I'm sure a lot of people say, oh man, that's a lot of work. And it is, but the good thing is that there's actually some people who like to do that work and are good at it. And we, of course, together with the city, feeding all kinds of information to make that process. That takes about a year. And then we get to the, in my opinion, the most important and fantastic gate 2. It's where we have the so-called FID. It stands for Financial Investment Decision. That's where we purchase the land. So before we go into gate 1, we'll have an option agreement on the land, and then at gate 2, we'll actually purchase the land so we can start building. And that's when all the permits are in hand. And we start writing that big check for the entire investment. And then gate 3, 4, and 5, that's in construction. So for a normal site, we need about 25 acres. We have plenty of room over at the Furches site. And we need, as you can see here, a little bit of data, who's interested. these power. And what I would just want to drew on a little bit here, water. Everybody talks about water. So we will use about 132,000 gallons of water that goes back to the sewer. We also need about, in this case, 12 million gallons of water for diluting the cocktail. So when we have the manure and a drier product as turkey manure, we need to get approximately 11% dry matter, and we need a little bit of water to do that. That water could be a brown water. It could be waste from the cheese plant, for example. But the point is, it's not going back to your sewers, or it goes on the fields. So we're not really putting any strength on your sewer system, which I have learned by being around, that this is something that cities are always concerned about. Yeah, so we have this approach to the board, and as Sean mentioned, we had a presentation and a talk to all the board members at one meeting. We also had meeting, of course, with Tariff, and I have brought various people from our company. Our CEO, Ole Velblom, was also up here and say hello to you guys, and so forth. And again, are we welcome? And we've found that we are welcome, at least to present our case here and talk to you guys, and we are always open for questions. As I said at the website, please do use that facilities to ask questions. There's no stupid questions, and we will answer them all. So, and then a big thing, of course, is when you don't have an operation here in US, we do these so-called smell tests, or maybe non-smell tests to Denmark, so you can see the facilities yourself. We can not pay your trip, because that will be kind of bride, but we will of course take good care of you, and we have a very extended program. And I actually have some pictures here. This is the first trip we did. I did that myself here, and this is the second. Tor did that. And this is people from Benson and in the Roberts area in Wisconsin. And here we had people from, actually Melrose, but we didn't carry that project on. And furthermore, just to give you an idea about how the trips are, so people ask our plant managers questions. We step aside so they can have it straight from the mouth, so to say. And people have been very impressed about these trips. And this is our ambassadors. I can tell you all kinds of stuff. I mean, ask your local people here, and there is more people who like to answer questions for you than necessarily here from Paintsville. Benson, Sauk Center, Freeport, Wilson, they all, I mean, if you want somebody else to answer questions, we can easily provide your names to go ahead, or seek them yourself. It's not difficult to find. Again, here we also was out on the farm to see a farm with a sand washer. So many farmers are betting on sand, and sand is good for cows. That makes happy cows, make more milk, but for anything else it's not good. Mechanical equipment breaks down or wore down. Our digesters don't want sand because it's settled and it's very expensive to take out. So we also looking into a solution for that. So we are trying to find a different bedding. Bob knows about that. So it's just to tell you that we look into all the steps and make this better. We're looking for all these win-win all the time. I always say this, I only see one negative, and that's transport. But even the transport has positive things. The fact that we can serve smaller farms, which is a big issue here. You all know that we talk about these industrial farmers and so on. Here, actually, smaller farms has an opportunity to participate and have a sustainable operation. People even call it a license to operate. That's a long discussion, but I'm be glad to take in it. But my point is only that Nature Energy it's not. How many times did I say gas tonight? Not a whole lot, huh? It's all about how to make the gas, the way, and helping farmers and those win-wins that we can find. And maybe when we add that drill for a second, so the crop growers, the way we think is, so crop growers, they bring in industrial fertilizer from China, from Russia, from Ukraine, or whatever. We substitute them now with local nutritions. And if the way we see it is, if a crop grower has an expense, let's say $100 a hectare, just to pick a number, we will give them the same nutrients of our digestate for half. That's a win-win for us, because we need to find a home for our digestate, but it's also a win for the crop farmer to the financial benefit for that individual. And that's the way we think on all the things that we're doing. The same also with taxes. We are not asking for any tax relief. Here is for the trip that Tariq and his guys were in Denmark. It was not a sunny day. We have many of those, unfortunately. And one more again, so they were out the site and in our facilities in Odense. And here's our RD manager, Martin, telling about all the equipment they had there. Yeah, that's all I had. And here's my email, but you can also have my phone number, 651-319-2598. Please feel free to call us anytime. And also here you can see Bob and mine. And that's I had for now. And now I think we should go to questions and answers, of course. Yes.
I have some on paper. I don't know if you start with those that were given online, or we should start with the room.
Well, while we determine that, can I just give a bigger shout out to the person who's not going to give himself one, because I know he's from the Midwest. When Mark Tuso introduced himself here, he very humbly talked about the work that he did in the whistleblower lawsuit, and when he talked about our water supply, it sort of sounded like he was talking about the whole state. He wasn't. When Mark talked about speaking out at the MPCA against our water supply, he meant here in Paynesville, with the issue that happened at the gas station that was over by the elementary school, and the efforts that were being made in the discussions within the MPCA on what we should do with that site to how to best clean it up. Mark was the hydrogeologist, fighting for Paynesville, and it is happenstance that now in his part-time retired life, he's here working with Nature Energy. So he is, Mark, I think we're very grateful for the work that you've done, the advocacy that you've done for us, that whistleblower lawsuit. We have a current study pending. We received state monies in the last budget cycle to do a water study, and we're doing that to look at whether or not we need to take additional action in cleaning up that site to prevent further contamination. The efforts that we've done over the last decades, we have gotten to a point where we have the volatile chemical treatment plant if something ever were to happen. But thanks to Mark's lawsuit, it brought awareness to the issue, and we're now looking to make sure that we are safe on that component for the next 50 to 100 years. So Mark's efforts here can't be understated. I just wanted to thank him for that and really show that when he's talking about our water supply, he does mean Paynesville, not the state as a whole, although certainly that is there as well. So thank you, Mark, and sorry for interrupting you, Jesper, but I just had to throw it out there before we turn over. So
we are still guests.
Is this one? Yes, perfect. Okay, so there's two questions here that I got handed on a note. The first one is, how many accidents have there been and how many leaks? And if you're talking about like personal accidents or something happened to people, we have not have anything of that. If you're talking about big accidents like gas or things that run off and all that, we have had nothing of that. So all our plants are, I think you can, and I can see that in the Facebook group where people have posted stuff, like for instance a report from 2015 about the horrors of biogas. We opened our first plants in 2015, so I can safely say that none of that has anything to do with us. I completely agree with those that think that there's a lot of shitty, to use the words, biogas projects out there. That's completely true. There's a lot of horrible projects out there that's been done. If you find the reports from the UK, you will find a lot of horrible stuff that's been done. You will find people that have put digest on top of a hill, and when it collapses, it runs out into a stream and kills 10,000 trouts. There's plenty of that. And this is why, one of the reasons why everything we do is different. And I don't know how much you know of Denmark or the EU in general, but those that know where we come from, this is highly regulated countries, and especially in Denmark. And I can show you some data later on nitrate levels and all that, how that's coming down and how that's a big part of the solution that biogas is a very big part of the solution in Denmark for nitrate levels in groundwater. Today, around 30% of all manure in Denmark goes through a biogas plant. In 5 to 7 years, going to be all of it, because that's what needed to have. If you want to have, we are very heavily farmland in Denmark, and if you want to have a lot of farm land and you want to have proper groundwater, you need to do something like this. So we have not have any leaks, and the way our plants, we are designed to fail safe. That means, of course, we don't plan to fail, but in the event that it happens, then nothing happens. So all our reactors, they sit down in a hole, so to speak. So that means if one should fail catastrophically, everything will stay in that hole on site and not go anywhere. One part of it is, of course, the environment. It's very important it doesn't get outside. The other part for us, we are talking about an investment north of $100 million. We have a lot of expensive equipment on site. We don't want that manure anywhere near our equipment either. So we want to know where that goes if anything goes wrong. The entire site has a surface. All of that is collected in a stormwater pond that is lined, and that the water quality is measured. So you have plants growing there. You can come and see how clean these ponds are. But all that water will be cleaned, and nothing can leave site until it lives up to all the criteria. So that's the way that's done. And that's the reason for having that is, let's say if some of the deeply that we take in, something is spilled, you don't want that to go anywhere. And so if we talk about at our side incidents, I mean, things are going to happen at an industrial scale. I think anyone who worked in a factory, something happens, and all that is, of course, recorded. And we have a QEHS department, and we can show you reports of everything we do. But if we're talking about anything serious in terms of hurting people, hurting the environment, hurting cities, something like that, we have nothing of that. We make sure, for instance, our process is anaerobic. That means no oxygen. So if people are afraid that a digester will explode, it will not. The pressure is extremely low and there's no oxygen, so nothing there can explode. We don't do, we can only have gas on site for, so all our gas goes to a grid. All is measured to be on spec. If something is off spec, a valve will shut. That means we cannot deliver the gas to the grid. Then we have half an hour to fix the problem because we don't have a gas storage on site. So this is just the gas that can be in the various containers around site at low pressure. If we haven't fixed it, we will need to start flaring, and that is, of course, to be safe. We don't want to flare. Any plant in Denmark will flare a few hundred hours a year, so almost nothing, and that's just a safety measure if the gas is off spec. We don't store gas on our site because that is not safe. So that's the two questions in one. Then the other one is, how many opportunities have been given in the US, and how many have moved forward, and how many have been turned down? So just to give you a little bit of history, when we started looking at the US, it was during COVID. Jesper, I think you spent 1.5 years to try to get over here. It was a difficult country to get in at that site. So we found a local partner that we started developing projects with. And that has not turned out successfully, and we have that contract has been terminated. There were 3 projects in the first round, and those were the Benson, the Wilson, and the Roberts project. And there are 3 more that we decided not to continue with, and that we didn't even start development on because we wanted out of that contract. And the Benson one we are still pursuing, and that one I'm sure is going to go forward. The Wilson one, as Jesper talked about, we didn't pick the site, and when we finally did the geotech there, the proper geotech, it was a horrible site. There was cast right beneath the surface, so we say we cannot do this. Of course, very angry with our partners here that they had not chosen a better site. We did the Roberts facility, and there we actually had an issue with a consultant. They had overlooked that the site was inside a wellhead protection area. We came to the city, we had a big study done showing that we would not affect the well, and we proposed to the city that if anything ever happened to the well, we would dig how many wells they would need, and instead of that, we would dig that. And the city was not interested in that, and therefore we withdraw from that project because we were in a wellhead protection area, and if the city didn't want us to give them a new well if something happened to the original one, then we couldn't do that project. So therefore we withdrew our application from that. As Jesper said, we're doing the Benson project. We're looking for a new site in Wilson. We are here in Stearns County, the #1 dairy county in Minnesota. We're looking at Sauk Center, Freeport, and Painesville. And instead of the Roberts facility, we're looking in Richmond, that is very close because we already had a good backing from a lot of farmers there. And now we ourselves have found a site that is appropriate for a biogas plant. So these were the questions from the paper, and then I think we can open up to the floor.
Can you speak to the overall carbon footprint, whether it's an overall positive, including even your flight here, like all the way to the end? I mean, once those trucks are done, where do they go? You know, how is it carbon footprint? I have 2 more questions.
Yeah, we need to. So I can go pull up a slide, then I can show you. But just roughly speaking, we use 20% of the energy we produce, we use ourselves to operate the plant, and 1.5% of the energy we produce, we use to run the trucks. So 21.5% is the average number. That's what we use ourselves. Then we take the the process itself is carbon neutral. And then, for instance, here in Painesville, where we're doing the CO2 liquefaction, because we take that and replace fossil CO2 that JNEO would use as like for food packaging, or dry ice is produced from CO2 and all that. So then we are actually pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. And in some of our other plants, we're going to take that CO2 and pump it underground. Maybe you've heard of carbon capture and storage. So either our plants are somewhat CO2, all of them are negative on CO2, and some of them are highly negative because we're effectively pulling carbon out of the atmosphere.
Okay, so I guess my question is, let's say if you didn't build the plant, you wouldn't need to even have these trucks built to haul it and then have all those bins built. It took CO2 to build all that stuff too. So overall, as you were saying, it's all neutral?
Yeah, so what happens inside our digesters, that happens out in the farmer's lagoon today.
Right.
So every farmer's lagoon today with manure in it will emit methane, which is a greenhouse gas that's 25% stronger than CO2. So that we will take in. All that food waste that here is typically landfilled is giving off CO2. So all those stuff we take in, and we take that methane gas out of it and replace it with, so instead of when we send it to the grid, then someone will use our green gas instead of fossil gas, which will stay underground. So that's how we are effectively replacing fossil gas with renewable gas. The same way you do with electricity, basically. Instead of someone burning coal to make electricity, a wind turbine is generating electricity, and then the electricity comes from the wind turbine instead of the coal. Here the gas comes from biomass instead of down in the ground where some organisms died a million years ago.
And another safety question. Now, a lot of fertilizer plants have a lot of explosive chemicals that are either produced even temporarily and then converted. My question is, how much of all the explosive ingredients are kept in large amounts and anywhere, and how close of an explosive hazard would that be if something did explode? Is the city too close to where it knocked down half the city? That's, because there's been explosions in other fertilizer plants that have taken out a whole town. And that's right across. That's not very far from town.
producing fertilizer is something very different. So when we talk about this being a fertilizer, it's manure. So it's as explosive as manure, so to speak. Well, basically less because we took out the methane, but I mean, there's not enough methane that you can put a light to a manure pit. So all the fertilizer is basically just digestate manure, as we call it. So we take off the gas and we turn that out, and then we replace all that commercial fertilizer. So as you can imagine, I know it's one of the highest concerns in Minnesota around farming is the pollution that comes from commercial fertilizers. You do produce a good amount of commercial fertilizers here in the U.S. As to my extension, I don't think anything is being dug out of the ground here in Minnesota. Some in North Dakota, Mexico, Morocco, Russia, China are the big one of phosphorus. So the idea here is instead of importing importing phosphorus from the other side of the globe, you just reuse that phosphorus you have here already. So it's local, sustainable fertilizer instead of a chemical fertilizer from the other side of the earth, basically. And this is what all of this is about, that we place our biogas plants in an area where there's the manure and there's the organic material, and we want to basically take all that is available and left over in the area, instead of that going to landfill or just sitting in a lagoon. We take it in, we take out the gas that the farmer has no use for. The farmer only needs the nutrients. There's no nutrients in gas. Take off the gas and give a good fertilizer back. And I know there's a lot of people that are concerned about whether we are bringing in nutrients, and we are, and our fertilizer is a more strong one, but all that doesn't go back to the dairy farmers. We do that to the cash crop farmers. I know people are concerned about manure application on farmland, and if you want to push your legislator to be more strict on that, go do that. Those that are the dairy farmers with the manure are those that are the mostly regulated. Those that do cash crop farming, they can buy however much fertilizer they want and put it on. So what we're going to do is going to give them a digestate. That means that they will actually put on what is needed, and it cannot just go as high as they want. And again, we won't bring all these commercial fertilizers in. And if you ever look up how many heavy metals there are in phosphate rock, I would any day prefer this over that.
Hello. So you have those setups for the truck to pull up from the farms and everything. Who's going to pay to help farmers transition over into that completely new system? So are you guys going to be footing the bill for that, or are the farmers going to essentially be locked into a contract?
Talk about the value prop. Want to answer that question?
Yeah, I can. I mean,
so you have that pumping design for the farmers, like the truck goes to the farm and pumps it out. Who pays for changing a farmer's system to be capable for handling a system like that?
Yeah, so I guess I'll just kind of give a big overview on what we do with the farmers. So you saw the circular system that we have there, right? So we want to have our digesters love fresh, raw manure, right? So one investment that all the farmers need to make in order to partner with us is to have what we call a reception pit. So it holds approximately, we want to have at least 2 days of manure storage because we don't haul on Sundays, right? So that, and you see our trucks will come and they'll, first when they come out to the farm, they'll drop off the digestate or nutrient water, and then go and pick up the raw manure from that reception pit. We have an analysis that we go through. We sit down with each and every farmer because we are asking them to make an upfront investment. We work with that farmer to pay for that investment that they have to make, their capital investment, because it's a partnership. That, and then also on an annual basis, based on how much manure we are collecting from them, we also have an annual financial incentive for them, because I like to call it, I guess, the hassle factor, right? Because we got a truck that's going to come in there every day, except for Sundays, and pick up that manure. You know, in the winter, they got to plow it out to make sure that we get there. So we want to make sure that we're compensating them for their extra time or their hassle that they may have to have as a result. And then in a true partnership fashion, we also provide profit share. The better we do, the better they're going to do. So we have a profit share that we also work with them. And I mentioned too a little bit, I think I heard Tor mention, you know, a lot of dairies just, you know, cow manure is higher in phosphorus. And so what we'll do at the plant at the back end is we'll take out some of those solids, run it through a screw press, run it through a decanter or two or centrifuges to take out those solids. With that solids goes the phosphorus, right? So we're not going to be overloading those farms with phosphorus any longer, right? Because we're taking that out. But also sometimes in that process of taking out those solids, we may end up taking out, we're going to take out a little bit potassium. And for those that are, you know, here that are dairy farmers or know anything about dairy farming and growing crops, potassium is certainly an important nutrient that's needed to grow alfalfa and corn. And so if in our process that we take out too much phosphorus or potassium, more than what they're bringing us, we'll shore that up at the end of the year because we're not, and we will reimburse them financially to make sure that they can go ahead to the fertilizer plant and buy that phosphorus, because we know that we have the phosphorus, not the phosphorus, the potassium sitting in our plant, right, in those solids. So we'll be able to sell those. So really it's not really a net loss for us, but we want to make sure that the farmers stay whole with that potassium. Did that answer your question?
Kind of.
Huh?
Not entirely, no. Yes, so the farmer pays for it and then you guys reimburse them, or you foot the bill from the beginning?
So, and sorry, Bob has a hearing aid, that's why it's a little bit difficult with the questions. Yeah, so the farmer will have to take money out of their pocket to do something, to get started with us, and we will provide some of those costs. For instance, one of the things we will provide is that the two funnels, one that goes in their existing manure lagoon and the one that will go in the reception pit, that is sort of a starter kit from us. So we don't pay for all of the costs that the farmer will have when we start, but we pay with some of them. Is it the return? Is that
within a couple of years we're going to get the return on investment?
But they're locked in, right?
Within 2 years or less, they'll recoup their initial investment.
But they are locked in with you to handle their manure and to take the digester.
Yes.
Financially locked into you. So if they say after months, I don't want to be in this anymore, they have a contract with you to continue on. And they're locked in.
That's correct. We do have a contract. It's a partnership, a manure supply agreement that we have with the farmer that lays out how much we'll provide them for that upfront payment, how much we're annually, also that profit share, other responsibilities we have and the responsibilities that they have. That's correct. And it could be up to a 10-year contract.
So if they choose to lower their herd or increase, that affects that contract?
No. I mean, if they increase their herd, if they increase their herd numbers, that means we're going to be getting more manure from them, which will increase their potential annual payment from us. Yes,
so
incentive.
Small rural farmers and are supposed to be whatever, they're locked in that contract.
Yeah, and that's something that we would work out individually with each individual farmer based on what their long-term goals and aspirations are. If they don't want to be milking cows past 5 years, then we'll work out a contract that would work with the farmer. Yep.
There will not be penalties. Is that what you're aiming for? If
Or it's a contract.
Yeah, that's true, but
There's penalties. Yeah.
No, if they no longer milk cows, if they're no longer milking cows, it's in the contract. I mean, we're not going to ask them for anything because they're not milking cows anymore. So it's in the contract that, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Correct.
There's a termination period as in anyone else, so I mean, people don't tend to retire from day to day. So if you say I'm going to retire in a year, then you say I would like to get out of this contract. There's no such thing as a 10-year period where they're going to be obliged to work with us. And maybe to give you a little, I know here in the US it's a little bit different in terms of the size of the farmers. So in Denmark, for every one plant, we'll typically have anywhere from 50 to 100 farmers. We are not dependent on any one farmer. In Canada, where we are working at the moment, they typically have 100 cows per farm. So we're looking at 150 to 180 farms per site. We're never dependent on any one farmer. And there's nothing, there's no penalties, there's no litigation, there's no nothing in that. This is a partnership, and if we start litigating farmers, you can be sure that we will no longer have any projects anywhere.
Bob, can I interrupt?
And so our experience with farmers, I talk to dairy farmers every day. They're very receptive. Everyone is willing to sit down and have the conversation to learn more about it. They're able to reduce their carbon footprint as a result of this. Yes, we do monetize that, and we share that information with them. We're the ones monetizing the carbon credits out of that, and again, they're very interested in it. And here's the reason why. What we are providing is our niche is all those that aren't going to have a digester sitting right next to their dairy, right? So we're providing an opportunity for all the other dairy farmers that aren't milking, pick a number, 3,500 cows or more, which is typically where you're going to see some, those on-farm digesters. They're starting to go on a little bit smaller. But now, every farmer is able to contribute. The dairy industry as a whole wants to become greenhouse gas neutral by 2050. Greenhouse gas neutral or better by 2050. We now, because of Nature Energy, provide them with an opportunity to reduce their own carbon footprint and to help the dairy industry achieve its overall goals. So every dairy farmer wants to be an environmentalist, and this is an opportunity we have to partner with them on that.
I don't want to interrupt your answer, but Jeremy asked me to remind everyone, Matt's walking around with a microphone, so for those who are in the back, and especially for those who are watching online, we are live streaming this and recording it, so please just put your hand up, Matt will come around and give you the microphone, and that way everyone can be heard and everyone's questions can be answered, and we're not missing anything accidentally. So just a reminder, everyone, we do have a mic, and Matt, I don't know if you can see it, there's somebody in the back once you're ready for it, but I know it's up here first.
I'm glad you brought up Benson. So in my working life, I ended up involved in that project on the construction side, providing material. It was the latest technology from Europe. It was all bound up in politics and all bunches of crazy things. Took them years to get it to work. It finally functioned. They had all kinds of hurdles because of politics. And then they found a cheaper way to produce the same energy and they shut it down. So I think this is certainly a venture that you can control all kinds of things. How do you guarantee you can control the politics of a country that is so absolutely polarized that you can't tell what one's going to do, and God knows what happens if the other party gets in? It just is a crazy time. And Benson just seems to stick out as really a trademark of craziness.
You're right. I mean,
yeah, there are a couple differences. Obviously, the Fiberman example that you gave, one main difference is we're producing the energy and we are then injecting that into the pipeline. In that case, Xcel Energy was forced to purchase the energy from the turkey litter that was being burned, and as soon as Xcel was able to get out of that contract, they did. So we're back to what Jesper's point was too. We're design, build, own, and operate, and that's the Fiberman situation was something almost basically forced on Xcel. So two totally different situations, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, well, it is. It is. So the market is different. So we sell the gas off as gas, and then we get credits for the carbon footprint that companies want to leave. All the big companies are talking about being neutral in 2030, 40, and 50. They can't do that without buying credits. So that market is huge. Xcel Energy, as I understand it, was simply that the cost of electricity went down, so it was a bad case for them. Those credits can, of course, also go down. You're absolutely right. But the chances for that, we see is very, very limited. Well, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow.
But I mean, when we look at our investments, we're looking at a 40-year investment. So that's how long we look at that we want to have the plant. That's with a major overhaul after 20. I mean, we maintain it all the way, and a major overhaul after 20 years, and expect to be here for 40. And maybe if you think back 40 years, what has happened in that period? I mean, of course, we cannot say that biogas plant will be as profitable in 40 years. But if we can see anything, I mean, we all want the world to change in terms of going away from fossil and being renewable. A lot have happened on the electricity side. That was the easy part. Now the more difficult part is the chemical energy, and it's storing energy. So one of the things, for instance, that we do on our projects as one of the first companies in the world, we're doing full-scale Power-to-X this summer in Denmark. So that means we take that renewable electricity, make a hydrogen out of it, split it in an electrolyzer, we use that hydrogen together with CO2 to make methane. So that's Power-to-X. We're storing electricity as a chemical battery. So I mean, we are on a mission to halve the cost for us to produce biogas over the next 10 years. That's why we have that R&D lab, the biggest. You don't find any other biogas company that's doing that. So you know, wind turbines that started back in Denmark, and in the beginning it was heavily subsidized. Today the wind turbines, when a Danish government goes out and say we want to do wind turbines here, the companies have to give the highest price to be allowed to do it. And that's the same journey biogas is on. And I mean, we're going to bring down the cost, and the demand is just going to be better. If you look at Walmart, if you look at Target, if you look at Tyson, look at how much natural gas they use. And they all want to be carbon neutral, or in 2050 the latest. That's in 25 years from now. These are 40-year projects. This is happening.
Good evening. I'm just wondering, when you end up with an overabundance of digestrate and the farmers either can't or won't take it for whatever reason, what do you do with the excess?
We don't do what we call the final investment decision is when we provide that. We decide to spend that more than $100 million. We don't do that until we have farmers signed up to the input and farmers signed off for the output. So we do no investment decision unless we have an offtake signed off.
So in other words, the farmer is committed to taking whatever digestrate is produced from his manure, whether they can use it or not. They have to take it back. Is that
it's not a matter of
what we're saying in plain English?
They want it back. That's how they fertilize their field. So they basically, what we do with a dairy farmer is they need a certain amount of nitrogen and a certain amount of phosphorus and a certain amount of potassium for their crops. And the way it's done today, as you probably know, they take a sample, is it once or twice a year, and that's what they base their nutrient plants. Yeah, so typically while they're emptying. So what we do, every day we take a sample. Every week we update the data on the web portal. That means that the farmer every day of the year can know exactly how much nutrients there is in what's coming from us, so they can completely give the right amount of nutrients for their crops. That also means that today a farmer will tend to give a little too, because those data from the manure is uncertain, they'll tend to buy commercial fertilizer to be sure that there is enough. And that's stuff that increases the risk of runoff and so on. And the farmer basically don't like to do it because it's money out of pocket, but they rather be sure to have enough fertilizer. We give them this updated data every day of the week. So that means that now they can exactly tailor the amount of nutrients they need from the crops. On top of that, we've made the nitrogen more plant available, and it's in ammonium form. Ammonium is a positively charged ion that binds to the negatively charged ion in the soil, which means it doesn't run off. So it's right there and it's available. And you don't have a lot of organic matter that during the winter months will break down and run off with that snow melt in the spring. You will not have that. So we give back the farmers exactly, basically what they need. So instead of guessing, now they will know.
Are we ready for another one?
In the midst of it, was there part of the question that I missed? Did I answer all of it, or is there part of it I missed?
I guess I'm not really clear on what happens to the excess. If you end up with more than what the farmers need, what happens to that?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's the So we find local. So we will have more. It will be more concentrated. That means that it will quicker go into the ground, which is also a benefit, lowers risk of runoff. And we will have a surplus because we bring in food waste, delactose, whey permeate, all kinds of stuff. In our plant, we all over Nature Energy, we use around 140 different types of things we put into our plants. That excess one will go to a cash crop farmer, a row crop farmer. So we will make sure to find a home for it. And there's and that's where it will replace the commercial fertilizer. So there's nothing. I mean, we don't have any storage for that on site. We need to find someone. So that's why we'll contract with them. And if you can ask any farmer, if I have something, I have exactly the nutrients you need, and I can give it to you at half price, I will dare you to find a farmer that would not like to take that and then stop buying commercial fertilizer.
Right, Tor, I'll mention too on top of that. So basically the farmers are going to want this back. And as long as the people are farming, they're going to need the nutrients. And if the digestate is a better deal than what commercial fertilizer is, they're going to naturally use the digestate. And if they're not taking it, we're not getting it either. That help at all?
And I can maybe add on top of that we're doing this what we call designer manure, because we have this on the back end where we're taking off these solids where the phosphorus is. That means that if I have farmer A over here that maybe have soil that can take more phosphorus because they haven't been applying a lot, we can give them part of our digestate that has a higher amount of phosphorus. Someone over here has been putting a lot of manure on over the years, so has high phosphorus. That is measured in the soil test. We take out that phosphorus and give them a much lower amount of phosphorus back so they can get those phosphorus level down where they need to be. And this we can tailor-made for each farmer. So each farmer can get exactly the right amount of nitrogen and phosphorus to his or her crops.
Ready, here we go. Okay. Thank you guys for being here. It's very helpful, and we certainly do appreciate your absolute knowledge in your individual fields. My question is somewhat along that what you'd started out saying. It's a trust issue between all of us, working together and that. You had mentioned you're putting up $100 million for this. Which one of you has that deep pockets? I'm assuming that there are investors. And I'm wondering if some of this is government grants from the United States government.
We do not we do have grants that we have applied for together for like the nutrient sheds and things for improving the environment. If you're looking at the plant build itself, we have no plans to take a government grant. If you're thinking about the Inflation Reduction Act, it's not something that we are calculating into any of the things we are doing.
Very good, thank you. I think that was very well put, and I thank you for that. Also, you also said up front that you had started this company in 1979.
Yeah, so
at least that's what I took off of that your earliest date was 1979.
Yeah, that's
and now that's 40 plus years.
Yeah, I think we should divide it into two phases. So there's let's call it the center point phase, where we live on a kind of semi-big island in Denmark. There's 8 municipalities, and together they owned. So in Denmark, there's a lot of these structures that's been owned by municipalities. So these 8 municipalities own what is called Naturgas Fyn, natural gas Fynen. Fynen is the island.
Sure.
So they together owned all the piping in the ground, and they had the gas customers. Then back in around 2013 in Denmark, we were also looking at the issues we had with farming and groundwater and nitrate and all that.
Sure.
What should we do about it? And we want to be independent of fossil gas. So they said biogas is the solution. So we started up building our first plant owned by these 8 municipalities. We built the first 3. Then we looked at it and said, okay, if this is gonna accelerate, it's gonna make a difference to Denmark and to the world. It cannot be 8 municipalities in Denmark providing all the tax dollars. I guess you wouldn't want to be the one who would be providing all those billions of tax dollars, right? So these 8 municipalities, they sold what was now Nature Energy, so just a change of the name. All the distribution grid in the ground got sold off to a state or a government body or however that is said. All the customers of natural gas got sold off to a company doing that. So now we are just only a company doing biogas plant. We got bought by a Danish pension fund and 2 capital fund investors from the UK called Davidson Kempner and Pioneer Point. So these 3 together owned us and were making all these investments. So they put all that capital in. And then late last year, there was a sales process, and Shell was the one who came out on top. I don't know how many, we are told that I think there was 5 different companies looking to acquire us. Shell came out on top. Over the winter, it was looked through by competition authorities, and then the deal closed in February this year.
Yeah.
So we are now a subsidiary of Shell. We are still called Nature Energy.
Yeah.
And basically the plan for Nature Energy, I mean, Shell also has an ambition to be net zero in 2050. All of Shell's natural gas today is black. All of that is going to be Nature Energy. So that's why they bought us. We should change the entire fossil natural gas to renewable natural gas.
That was my actual question. I was
Shell
leading
will,
up to, if you are now owned by Shell, and is there a representative of Shell here?
Well,
you are. You're that representative.
Guess we are. We are not kind
Very
of...
good.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Matt, there's a few down here. I know that there's also over here, I can see, and here.
Thanks. So with the digestion process, everything you see says that there's hydrogen sulfide produced as a byproduct of that. You didn't mention that today, and I'm kind of curious as to why.
Oh, I just haven't had the question, but we didn't want to go into the detail about it, but I'm happy to answer it. So yes, there is hydrogen sulfide. Hydrogen sulfide is a nasty compound. That's why if you walk around, if you go to a tour with me on one of our biogas plants, for every 10 person, we have a monitor here that measures hydrogen sulfides and other gases. And this is about, I've never had one of these go off, but this is about failing safely, right? If something happens, we want to get out of there quickly, right? Yes. It's not explosive or anything, but you need to go away quickly. So there's 2 things that with the hydrogen sulfide. One is the part that in the process we produce that hydrogen sulfide, and we cannot send that out on the gas grid because it's very corrosive. So in what is called the biogas upgrading process, we have a biological filter. So we trickle this down over some of these plastic particles where there's bacteria growing on, and they break down that H2S. So it just becomes different sulfur particles that are, so it's no longer H2S, and it becomes part of the digestate. It's no longer in a volatile form, so it goes back on the farmer's field as sulfate, and sulfate is also something that a farmer needs. So that's no longer smelly and no longer dangerous. Then we have the air in the buildings that we also collect, that also go through an air filter, and that also, that part again, bacteria are breaking that H2S down, and again is added to the digestate sulfur back to the farmer. So only clean air goes out the stack, so no H2S goes out the stack, no H2S comes out on the gas grid.
So your trickling filters remove 100% of that hydrogen sulfide?
So I know from the gas system, for getting it on the gas in Denmark, it has to be less than 10 ppm, but because we're doing CO2 liquefaction, it has to be less than 1 ppm. I know our system always runs at, the aim is to run it at 0 ppm, and if it spikes, we have a carbon filter that takes care of the rest. I can show you the data on how much it's in there, but I only know the regulation part of it and what we live up to, but I can show you data on what it is on an actual level if you're interested in that.
Yes, I'd like to see that.
I'll can one of you write that down so I don't forget? Yeah, and yeah.
Anybody else? Just got another one here. Oh, I'll bring it back here.
I don't fly out until Tuesday, so I'll be here as long as you want.
Thank you for coming as well. I'm appreciative of the time that you were spending with us, and it has been all good information, so thank you. There's been a lot of chatter, I'm sure that you have heard about the river being close by. Can you speak to any impact or, you know, that you would have on that, or any containment process or whatever?
I think Mark will be the best to answer that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think you're worried about manure or digestate getting into the river versus washing off farmers' fields. So I helped write Minnesota's above ground storage tank rules about 20 years ago. These guys are exceeding those standards. So basically what's going to happen is they'll have an impermeable barrier and concrete under their tanks, and then they'll have a containment. Like if you've ever been to like those big tank farms, you see that big wall of soil around it. That's called the containment berm. That's to keep the largest content tank from overflowing and running off. So this is going to, the fact that they have this containment there is going to greatly reduce the chance of manure or digestate getting to the river. In addition, you know, didn't really talk about it, but every farm that stores manure, they store it for almost a year. Isn't it usually a year's supply they store? Those are where the big spills come from. So those are no longer going to exist. Like I say, every day or every other day, the manure is going to be taken to Nature Energy. So this is going to greatly reduce the amount of manure that's going to end up in lakes and rivers. And in addition, the nutrients with all that green algae blooms that you see all over the place, that's all phosphorus, that's going to be greatly reduced as well. So that's why I'm excited about it, because I mean, I see this stuff happening all the time, and it's just like, finally somebody's coming up with a solution that's going to work.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. In addition to that, so our thermophilic digesters, thermophilic 52 degrees Celsius, 125 degrees Fahrenheit, which is at a higher temperature than all the other digesters out there that are basically at 102 degrees. And the reason I mention that is because we get pathogen kill. So in addition to the potential phosphorus loading that may happen in rivers and streams, or there's also potential E. coli, salmonella. Our digesters destroy that. So significantly reduces the risk of any type of pathogen in surface water. And because all the dairy farmers are required to follow a nutrient management plan, anyone who does apply manure onto fields has to have a nutrient management plan. And so that in and of itself also reduces the risk of surface water. And Tor had already addressed the nitrate and groundwater issue a little bit too, because of the available nitrogen that we have in our digestate. So those are some other things. Honestly, I mean, us coming in helps to provide the solution to some of the challenges that may happen right now today with surface water and groundwater contamination.
So you said 6 months, and I shouldn't say 6 months. You got storage, and you're going to have extra manure. So where is this extra manure going to go in June, July, and August, in December, January, February, and March, when you can't haul it out to the fields with the frozen ground?
Yeah, right. So for example, I'll just throw this out. So for right now, for raw cow manure, it's going to be about 12,000 to 15,000 gallons that needs to be applied per acre in order to meet the amount of nitrogen needs for corn, okay? Because of our co-digestion process, bringing in turkey litter and what we're doing, and higher nitrogen levels in that, the dairy farmer now applies about 5,000 to 6,000 gallons per the acre, give or take, to meet that same amount of nitrogen needs for that corn crop. What that means then is also that storage that the farmer has today, that let's say if it only holds 6 months, but quite honestly, in Stearns County, the vast majority of all manure basins that have been built on the farm have been used with cost share dollars. And those are 9 months storage at the time based on the number of cows that the farm had at that time. So really, we're reducing their storage needs or extending the amount of time that they can store that manure in there, allowing them to apply once a year, or because we're also, it's less amount that they need to apply per acre, it gives them a much bigger window in the spring. Because you're applying less, that soil dries up faster and is ready to be planted and ready to be worked and planted much sooner with 5,000 gallons to the acre versus 15,000. So we're opening up a spring window. Plus our nutrient water, when we're taking out those solids, also provides an opportunity for irrigation, subsurface drip fertigation, or center pivot fertigation, those types of things. And because the digestate and or nutrient water is significantly reduced odor, that would allow you then to use them center pivots.
But what
it
about
allows for much better utilization of the nutrients in that to apply it at the right time with the right amount.
But you were selling it to crop farmers. Crop farmers do not have lagoons. So where are you bringing it to the crop, your excess to the crop farmer?
Yep, so with the crop farmers, we obviously will work with them to also build storage. Financially, we'll work with them to build that storage, and financially, we'll work with them to make it where it's advantageous for them to apply nutrient water or digestate on their fields.
So no one working with Nature Energy will spread any manure outside the spring and the fall application areas. No one will be winter spreading. There will be no dairy farmer or crop farmer partnering Nature Energy making brown fields in the winter. No one.
Okay. I have a question with regard to the gases present during your digestion process. You mentioned that there's hydrogen sulfide, but you're mitigating it with a bacterial catalyst so it's not coming out of the stack. Acquaintance of mine sent you guys a question through one of the city council members that you'd answered, stating that your facilities are built with steel. However, I know that a concentration of hydrogen sulfide in the fractions of a % will eat steel in a matter of 2 to 4 months. So obviously you're not using steel. What are you using to build your facility?
We are using the quality of steel that can withstand hydrogen sulfide.
But there is no steel that withstands hydrogen sulfide. There's other metals, and they're very high-end metals.
That's not correct, and I can show you the data. They are built of steel.
It is correct. I hold a patent in this area, actually.
That's fine. You can come and visit all our sites. They are all built with this, and it's not true.
I would like you to publish that data publicly.
That is perfectly fine. You can see it is in all our building permits. It says exactly what we build it out of. We're not saying to anyone that we will build it out of steel and then doing something else. These are Schumann tanks. You can just look them up. But I'll be happy to share that data with you.
Well, thank you for actually all your answers. You've been really informative, and I've learned an awful lot. But with all the positive answers you have, surely there has got to be at least one negative about this plant or company or process. There's got to be at least one negative, because surely nothing can be that perfect. I want it to be, but I don't believe it can be that perfect.
As Jesper said, I think the most negative part is the trucking. So if that truck is that one too many on a street, if that plant is chosen to be at a place where all the truck traffic would go through a city, that would not be a good idea, right? But this is the part of, this is also some of these projects that we walked away with. Because maybe we could have forced through to build a site on a shallow cast in Wilson. That would be a horrible site. I think it would be the 8 leaning digesters of Wilson. I mean, that wouldn't be a good thing. So we're taking very great care to do this, and anyone who wants, I cannot pay for any of you to come to Denmark, but if you're ever in the area, do reach out. I've showed a lot of people around. I'll always be happy to show you around and what it looks like. Denmark is a heavily regulated country, and as you can attest, if you want to speak to the MPCA, you can actually learn that we are actually trying to get these rules to be as strict over here. And why do we do that? We do it because we know how to run these digesters at extremely strict rule, and to be honest, that's a competitive advantage for us. We don't want to see all those crappy projects out there because they're making money that we could be making because we make good projects, and it's better for you that we make good projects instead of people making crappy projects. And there is a lot of really bad projects out there, sorry to say.
Okay, I have just a couple of questions real quick. When it comes to those tanks and any dangerous materials that could be temporarily there, are those tanks, let's just say a meteor came out of the sky, and then, right? Let's just say a meteor comes out of the sky and it punches a hole in one of those tanks. Are there any tanks there that would have something in it that would be extremely dangerous if a tank got damaged?
So there's nothing in the tanks that are more dangerous than raw manure?
Not even temporarily?
Sorry?
Not even temporarily, because you said hydrogen sulfide, but at some point it's not safe. So how much of that is in any spot that?
So I think if a meteor hits Painesville and destroys 8 digesters, I think we have a larger problem than that.
I'm not quite.
But
well,
I cannot assure you that anything in the world will not happen. That
right.
is, I mean, so we've done. I mean, so again, if these burst open, it's all gonna be contained, and the hydrogen sulfide that is on that site is still. I mean, if I'm right next to it, I gotta get away.
Right.
If you're inside the city of Painesville, the amount of hydrogen sulfide in our tanks, even though they collapse, would be so low that you would not be at risk.
Okay.
On top of that, of course, we have, just like you have at any other factory, I know I've tried at least back in Denmark, if a factory there's a burn at a factory and you would get that text message or something, stay indoors or get away, or I mean, if something, I mean, all these plans, of course, if anything like that would happen, so we have plans for all of that.
Right.
I mean.
Last question, would you be interested in town's input as far as what color the building is, and also, I mean, and if it's making a lot of noise, like if it is audible from across the river in downtown, would you be willing to put up sound acoustic panels or fencing type of stuff to?
I think maybe you could.
Can
you go back on the slides to the noise slide?
Talking level is still pretty loud.
But anyway, so the noise is at least 5 times lower than conversation in the city of Painesville. So that will be the noise, and that's based on a worst case scenario from a facility that's 25% larger. It is not silent in the middle of Painesville. I'm sorry. No, okay, but then I think it's the city that needs to answer if they want to do it. And this site has been chosen because the city would like to do industrial development, and industrial development makes some sound on site. I don't think there's any silent industrial. Yeah.
Okay. So you had stated that within 2 years a farmer would have a positive ROI and that they would pay for their digester, or their holding tanks, I should say, sorry. So that's based upon how many cows that they have? And again, what is the initial cost?
So the farmer's return the return on their investment will happen within 2 years.
Correct. But an ROI has to be based upon what? The pricing that they're receiving, how much they're selling, right? So if they're a positive ROI after 2 years, First of all, how much was the initial startup cost, and how many cows or how much manure are they selling the equivalent to?
So we sit down with each individual farmer and work through the process with them. And so the financial incentives that we have are confidential with each individual farm supplier. And we have, but here's how we base it, our formulas, which is, in being in the dairy industry for a number of years, it's and certainly on the milk side of it, it costs us the same to come to your farm if you're milking 5,000 cows to come and pick up that manure and bring it back, versus Tor, who has 50 cows. It's costing the same, right? Because if you're the exact same distance from our plant.
No, actually, being in the dairy industry, as many of these farmers are, if you have 5,000 cows, how many truckloads is that going to cost? So you would put that into your costs.
It costs us the same to drive to your farm if you're 10 miles away.
3 times for my
versus
5,000
Tor's.
cows versus 1 time for my 50 cows?
Our costs, so that's how we're basing it on. So that, I guess.
So if you have 5,000 cows, right, and I milk 5,000 cows today, how many truckloads is that going to take for me to get my milk, because that's what you're comparing it to?
Well, it's not milk, we're picking up manure.
Correct. Manure, milk, it's the same. So it's 1 truckload.
We go every time we can fill up a truck, and therefore the cost is the same. So if you have 50 cows, maybe we'll come every 3rd day. If you have a lot of cows, we will come every day.
Okay. So again, what's the initial startup cost if the ROI is paid for in 2 years? And what are the rates
The
that
initial
you're paying?
startup cost for the farmer?
Yep.
The cost for the reception pit.
Yes.
It's a cost for to put in a reception pit. That's what their costs are.
Yes. How much does that cost?
$1.50 a gallon to build it, roughly.
Okay. So how many gallons do they need?
They need a minimum 2-day storage.
To how large their farm is. Okay. But you just said that there would be a positive ROI in 2 years. So if I'm building a tiny little tank or a big
Can you maybe ask what is? I can see you have a concern. Can you maybe say what the concern is instead? I think maybe that's easy to answer.
what are the initial startup costs? What is the initial startup
And what is your concern around?
Is it
the
$1.50 per? Is that what it truly is?
Their investment is to put in a reception pit, of which we help to offset those
What
costs.
is the average cost of
upfront.
a reception pit?
You can go look it up and Google it. I mean, any farmer in here would know.
You're here to tell us. If you're saying
there's
there's
certain
a positive
building
ROI
costs.
and it's going to be good for us, I'm just asking a simple question.
Right?
I think that the cost is proportionate to the size of the herd or the amount of manure. So it's going to vary per farm. Now we do have a calculation to figure out what it is per gallon that it would cost to build a reception pit and what it would cost to cover the pits. We've got that calculation. So it's going to vary on the amount of manure that the farmer provides to us.
Correct.
That's what you're asking.
So no matter what, they will have a positive ROI in 2 years.
What?
No matter what, they will have a positive ROI in 2 years. Return on investment.
Yes.
Okay. So will the farmers' payments fluctuate during their contract? What you pay them to take it?
We have financial incentives that we work with dairy farmers on, yes.
So it will fluctuate? Okay. And the cost to essentially sell it back to them, that will also fluctuate, correct?
No.
Okay. So last thing I have is one of the city council members had met with approximately 8 of us, approximately 8. They told us exactly $1 million in taxes would be paid by your organization, and $500,000 additionally each year would go to our schools, so $1.5 million. What are your yearly? That's what we were told.
We have not estimated any taxes. So I think
You would not estimate any taxes?
No, we said we will not ask for any abatement or, exemption or anything. We will pay taxes in full. We don't decide what the taxes are.
Yeah.
Correct.
And I can touch on the property tax question a little bit as well. I had a phone call with Randy Schreifels, the Stearns County Auditor Treasurer, just yesterday, asking him what is the tax benefit going to be and how do we calculate that? What does it come to? So we have, throughout this process, talked to various people in the county auditor's office trying to get estimates. And because this is a new factory, because of everything like that, all we've been able to get are rough estimates. We can't give a number until we can get a property value assigned. So we have been discussing what that might be, but to say that there's been $1 million or $500,000, if I recall a conversation that we had, it was all hypothetical that this is what it could be. So if
we haven't decided anything.
Right. So hold on, we're going back to the property tax question here. I'm telling you, anything, we have very different recollections of that conversation, and that's okay. We can do that. That's fine. Hold on. That's fine. Cool. And if I said something in error, I will own that. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm above error. But anything that we've discussed is based on the best estimates of the information that we had at that time. So Tarek had talked to people from Stearns County, got a rough estimate. We've looked at those numbers. We've discussed it more. We continue to look into that. So to say that it's going to be $1 million to the city and $500,000 to the school, our entire city tax levy is $1 million. And that tax levy of $1 million, and I think here's where the county got a little bit concerned and mixed up. Our entire property tax base in the city of Paynesville right now is about $150 million. So if this plant came in at a property value of $150 million, that's going to equal the same amount of property dollars that are in every other property that's taxable in town. So they're going to eat up 50% of our tax levy. They can't eat up more than the $1.1 million that we levy out. If there's more, it could go to the county, it could go to other organizations that tax, but it can't ever be more, and it can't ever be more than their proportionate share of the property value. So there have been estimates discussed. Those have been estimates based on the information that we have at that time, and that information is changing. Again, we're working with the county to get better information as we go forward. If I made a firm statement, that was an error, and I'll own that. I don't recall that. Okay, so we need to, that is information that we are continuing to work on, but to say that there's a flat $1 million, it can't be more. It couldn't ever be more than what we've levied. The most that it could be, if every other property in town just disappeared, the most it would be is $1.129,054. That is the most that it could be. And right now, if the property valuation came in at $150 million, which it won't, because $150 million is construction cost, including land and anything else, and we're just speculating again on that number, that would be the total of our entire tax base. So it'd be about 50% of that $1 million, just roughly spitballing things here. Again, we're waiting on information. We've requested meetings with the auditor's office so that we can fully understand what that tax value is. Because again, opening up that pie, making that bigger, frees up some breathing room in other parts of the budget. And I know that there are some concerns, and Bill Tark gave me your question earlier. I'm just going to jump on it since I'm here. If you've got more, please follow up. But the question is, and I think it's valid, we don't want the city raising the tax levy just to offset what Nature Energy is now going to eat up, so that taxes stay the same, because that's not a wise use. I think, correct me, Bill, if I'm putting words in your mouth, but you wouldn't think that that's a wise use of tax dollars, to just say, it's there, so darn it, let's levy it and let's spend it. And I would, Bill, I tell you, we agree on more things than we think we do. We agree on that. So, no, it would not be wise for us to say, look, Nature Energy is coming in, they can gobble up 50% of the share of our tax burden. By golly, let's double our tax levy so that we can do everything in the world. That would not be a wise use of resources. But it would give breathing room as we look at things like What is a new library going to cost us, and how are we going to finance that? As we look at solving the housing crisis here in town and the child care, can we devote more monies, not all of it, but can we look at doing some of that into our economic development fund in order to help offset some of the struggles that we're seeing with child care and with housing, to help spur in some development of workforce housing and things like that? It'll provide some breathing room. I would not vote to gobble it all up, Bill. I hope that answers the questions Tarek told me you were going to ask. So, all right, thanks. Yeah.
Hi, I have a quick statement before I ask my question, and just that I was one of those 8 at that meeting, and we were told 1.5 million pilot money, payment in lieu of taxes.
No.
That's what we were told at that meeting.
I'm not saying you're wrong.
I'm just making a statement.
Yeah.
My question is, in regards to transportation, you said that that is the worst, the biggest problem with this whole thing is probably transportation. What about the country roads, the back roads where the farmers live? Is there a mitigation plan for all the damages that would be done to the increased traffic on those roads? I know they get really bad in the spring.
So that's part of the partnering value with them, that there's money for fixing the road for that to be okay.
And I'm just going to chime in. I don't recall that statement. I'm not saying anybody is wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong, but that statement is wrong. That statement is not true. The most that could be levied at any point is what the city sets. That's $1,129,054. So I can't go back in time. I would have corrected it if I had heard it or whatever happened there. But that statement is not true. So if it was made, that is not true, and we can fix that information.
Change the topic on you for a minute and ask another question. So the product of the manure that's inbound that will be used in your process, the nutrients, the chemical composition is a reflection on what the cows are fed at the farm, correct? So we're in agreement there. So as this manure comes in from all these different farms, some cows have different diets, they're eating different things, the chemical composition of the earth where that farm is located is different. Do we agree on that, I believe? So as we put all these things together, I liken it to distillation of liquor a little bit. As I boil down and my liquor goes through the proof process, not that I'm making liquor, but you know how distillation works, the alcohol content becomes stronger. So as things go through a digester, how are we dealing with, you know, manure is the waste product of an animal, my understanding. So the brown color comes from the red blood cells present that the liver has gotten rid of. And along with getting rid of those, the liver of the animal also gets rid of certain heavy metals that the animal's been exposed to in its daily journeying around the farm. Things like molybdenum, hexavalent chromium, lead, you know, various oxides of iron, things of that nature. Wouldn't the process of digestion amplify those chemicals in the material that's sent out as your nutrient water as a fertilizer? And how do you deal with that?
So since it's a circular process and nutrients are neither created nor destroyed, it's a circular process, so that won't change. We will have things coming in from like industrial waste, like for instance in Denmark, at my house I sort into 10 different fractions, one of them being food waste. So stuff like that in Denmark, we take out the plastic out, we take all the metal out, and then it lives up to a lot of strict requirements on all these heavy metals as you speak about. So all the industrial things, let's say something that is not manure, we'll be taking in, we measure all that things, and all the stuff we're doing is living up to any requirement that there is on a farm, but we're not amplifying things. And when we're gonna replace, if you look up how much heavy metals there are in commercial fertilizers digging out of phosphate rock in Morocco or elsewhere, over time, I mean, this is going to lower that as we limit that, because that's where the heavy metals come from.
My name is Bill Fuchs. I own BFM Manufacturing, which is almost your closest neighbor. First off, I'd like to thank you all for considering investing in our lovely little town. I truly mean that. I am ironically enough, also the former maintenance supervisor at Fiberman. So I've got a near and dear heart to biomass and that part of the energy sector. The one question I had, just curious, and maybe it's not even something that anyone can answer this evening, but I would love to see, as part of the process, to visit with the DOT to see if there's a possibility of having an egress and an exit off of 23 bypass. A lot of concern about the traffic coming in on Lake Avenue. If it does come in on and off Lake Avenue, I certainly hope as part of the project we get some turn lanes installed. Personally, I think they should have been put in there when Furch did the project. But yeah, the idea of having some type of bypass exit and entrance, it just seems like the most logical. I don't know if that's a state or county question, but yeah, that would be a nice thing. And you know, to share with the mayor my concerns. Yeah, one of the biggest concerns I have is not with the plant or the technology or any of that. It's with the idea of our city council suddenly having more of other people's money to spend. And so I would love to see, as part of this process, something put in place that sets a limit on future spending based on this sudden influx of capital. You know, maybe it's a 80%, 20-80% situation where 20% can maybe go towards future new spending and 80% would go towards reducing our tax burden, which is substantial. So yeah, that's really my biggest concern, is traffic flow. Otherwise, again, I thank you for considering investing in us, and I hope that I hope you're my neighbor. I hope we can proceed. Good evening.
I will not comment on the tax dollars. I would say in terms of the traffic, we'll do the traffic study, and I don't know if, Sean, I don't know, and Tariq, if you thought about already about the traffic, Lake Avenue, stuff like that.
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about Lake Avenue. Most of what I've been thinking about and looking at is, and I have to admit, I don't think adding a road there was my brainchild. It was somebody else's, and I can't recall exactly who it might have been. But by adding a road to connect Lake Avenue to this little guy over here that used to go to Bork, that I think would absolve a lot of the traffic concerns, primarily because we no longer have trucks going across the 4-lane highway that might be heading west. So eastbound turns out of Lake Avenue onto 23 I think are easy, but crossing that number of trucks over into the westbound lanes could get tricky. So if we can work together to partnership, I agree with the suggestion of turning lanes, looking at expanding intersections. It's longer than 4 letters, but roundabout is a 4-letter word, but that might be something that we would look into there to help manage things. Y'all are European and Danish, so I think you're probably open to that. But yeah, we need to work together as part of the conditional use permitting process to manage any traffic concerns and mitigate the potential for risk and danger there. That's something, the question is if the city would pay for that. I think that's something that we would probably be looking primarily on Nature Energy as part of the development and infrastructure costs to bear at least the bulk of that. So, because that is, I mean, that has been the biggest hindrance to getting that site developed. I can't say anything with how anything's going to come together, but that would be my position, is asking that the people who are going to be developing that land look at that cost. So there's my 2 cents. I'm one of 5, but that's my 2 cents.
Doing aerial views of the 13 plants that you have overseas, and only 2 seem to be remotely close to a city. Why would you build right adjacent to a city, right adjacent to the Crow River, right adjacent to, on the other side, that, what is it, some waterway?
The what, sorry?
If you could bring up that one map that you had with the, showing the water and the 100-year floodplain. You're squeezing the plant in between those two water sources. And so why would you build it right next to a city when your customers are out in the country?
Our customers are here in the U.S.
The customers, your farmers, they're out in the country. Why would you build your plant right next to a city?
So there's a number of things you need for a biogas plant. One of them is the connection to the gas grid. We do need a sewer, even though we don't use it that much for that. We do need water. We do need electricity. The thing we actually think is the benefit here in terms of being outside a city limit. So we look at something like this, and where I can say that the noise doesn't affect you, the smell doesn't affect you. I can go easily on the highway to not annoy you, and all that. And then you actually get the benefit of the tax dollars. If we were just outside on the other one, the same traffic would come onto that road, and you would not get any benefit on the tax dollars. So we think it's actually to benefit the city that we are in. Because, I mean, a factory is a factory. As I said, there's going to be trucks. So I'd rather that you get the benefit in...
A lot of connection between farmers and the cities. A lot of connection between farmers and the cities. We have fertilizer plants that are in town. We have cheese plants that are in town. We have machinery dealerships that are in town, all of whom do business with farmers.
Right.
And we're building in a very environmentally friendly manner, as Mark had mentioned.
And you indicated that your plan is for a 40-year business, 20 to 40-year business, I believe you stated. So are there remediation plans that will be in the contract that when you leave the city, that all of those membranes that you have underneath, all of those towers, everything is remediated and taken away, unlike what happened in that other, I'm not sure what city it was, in Benson,
but
when they left.
Yeah, all that is in that permit you seek with the city, where you agree how the site should be left, what should be removed, if should it be exactly as we found it, so to speak. The reason for the 40-year period, we don't plan to be away from here in 40 years, but you have to say you have to put a limit to how far out in the future you look in terms of your investment. And again, if you look 40 years back where you were, or where a factory was, and all that, there's a limit to how long you can look at an investment. So for us, this is perpetual, but we can only, we need to set a time limit on how far out we look. And it's just to tell you that we don't look to make our investment back in 10 years and then shut down and leave. So we plan to be here, and as we said, we are design, build, own, operate, and we plan to be here for 40 years to be a good neighbor.
And one final question. Will the stacks, with all of the stacks, I think there's 4 different stacks, is that correct? What is being emitted from each of those stacks? Is it visible? Is it smoke, vapor, flare? And what chemicals or gases emitted from each stack?
So I think, much to the question that gentleman asked, I think I'll give you some, instead of, I can't remember by heart what comes out of that. I mean, everything has been cleaned, but let me give you a data sheet instead. I think that's more useful. The two chimneys that are there, basically, one of them is the highest one. That's the one after the air filters. That's the one that's 197 feet tall. And the other one is a little bit lower, and that's on the gas boiler. So we use natural gas for, when we need to take out the carbon dioxide out of the methane, or out of the biogas to inject it. And that process, we need some heat, and we use a gas boiler to generate that heat. So that's the chimney of the gas boiler, is the second largest. And I'm sorry, I can't remember if there's 2 others, but then I'll come back to that as well. I'll notice. I'll write all 4 down and let you know what comes out of each and every one. No visible thing. I mean, there can be vapor in the. I mean, if it's a cold day, there can be vapor, right? But nothing yellow or green or anything. Is that what you're asking? No, we do have for safety reasons we do have a flare on site, but that's because we don't want to store gas. The alternative to a flare is have a big gas storage, and we don't want that. So let's say that if our gas is off spec for more than half an hour, then we need to start flaring it for the safety of everyone. And I said I can also give you that number, how much we flare in a year, but it's very little, but that's a safety precaution. We have to have that, of course. I actually, well, the ones we have in our plants in Denmark are visible, and well, it's you can see the flare, and you know, if you know a Bunsen burner from high school, right? Sometimes it might be a little bit yellow, but most of it will be blue. It'd be difficult to see. This is actually one thing with our new owner, Shell. I think they do enclosed flares. So I actually don't know. I mean, this project is more than a year out in being determined whether it will be done or not. So I can't answer you on that. I can show you how Danish flares look like, and I don't know how Shell's flares look like, and whether it's going to be a Nature Energy or Shell flare. But yeah, it will be burning like a Bunsen burner.
I have a question. So why did you guys change your name to Nature Energy?
Why we changed it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good question. So the one we had before was natural gas Fynen, and Fynen was the island, and natural gas is the fossil gas you pump out of the, well, that's, you know, if you learn about all the bacteria and all the stuff that died many million years ago and became the oil, so that's the, and the natural gas. So our name said natural gas, fossil gas, and an island. And now we are international. We want to be more than that island, so that's why we took the island name away. And we're no longer using that fossil gas from down in the ground. I know the name was changed before I started, but it is. But the stuff we grow, every time a human eats something, there will always be a leftover. So we produce energy, and we think we're doing a much better job for the nature that we are recycling everything instead of importing it from other countries.
Basically, it was going from being a Danish company to being an international company.
I have one more. What kind of chemicals do you, like, all the chemicals that you use, what are the names of those chemicals?
So we basically don't add any chemicals to the process itself. It has to go back on farmland.
All right, you had stated that you guys would use things, or you could use other substances such as whey permeate, correct? And you said, I thought there was a number up to X amount of different substances that you would be using or you could potentially use. Do you guys have a list of those anywhere?
I can probably pull it for you. So if you look at all of the company, we use around 140 different kind of things. Some of them being different kinds of manure. So it could be like from a dairy cow. It can be what was called deep litter in the video. I think you will call it bedding pack here. It can be slurry from sow barns and finishing barns and so different kinds of manure. And then it's basically any kind of organic waste that is safe to apply to a field after it's been digested for 30 to 35 days. And that can be, I mean, we take sugar beet tailings, leftover carrots, spoiled food, grass, silage, well, anything organic basically you can think of that is safe to put on a field.
You had also stated that you could potentially use whey permeate from AMPI, which would be a good thing, right? Because their BOD loads are high. Is that something that you would build a treatment facility, or how? I mean, it would ship there, I guess. And then on top of that is, what are your BOD loads? I'm guessing they're none, slim to none.
What? Sorry.
BOD. So like what you put back into. Yep.
I don't know that by heart, but I mean, so we're very attentive to how taking care of this digester is like, I mean, as Jesper said, it's a delicate balance. So let's, for instance, like when sugar beet is in season, we can't just throw a lot in there. We gotta wean the bacteria onto the sugar beet, and when season is off, we gotta wean them off again. And this is also part of that. We do this hub and spokes model. So when we come to an area like Minnesota, we want to build at least 10 plants because we want these centers of excellence where we have biologists sitting that are completely optimizing the product. We have a logistic expert sitting, so the truck driver doesn't have to make a decision to turn left or right. That is done. For instance, a logistic department decides that if there's a school there and the kids come to school 7:30 to 8:15, then none of our trucks will go past that school in that time of day, all that. So we really want to optimize. Everything. So it is a very delicate balance to manage these digesters. And I think that's also why it's so important that it's a company like us that has that as our sole focus, and not a farmer who has it as a side business, because their focus is on the animal and the cropland. It's important that this is someone who does this every single day.
So you guys would have no negative effects on the water treatment facility with like high BODs?
No, so what we will give to a water treatment facility is the humans that are there. So the 10 to 12 humans, the rest, that is basically it.
Okay.
And the water, as Jesper said, that we use, like, so we wash our the biological filters and stuff like that, and that also goes in the digestate and goes out on the field. But yeah, again, everything we have in a process goes out on a field, so it lives up to all requirements of putting things on a field.
So in the event that anybody needs the microphone and you didn't have it yet, I do have a blow horn if somebody needs it. So this is from the Minnesota.gov. Due to the substantial value of investments made in equipment to serve the Benson Power Mass facility, it valued in excess of $100 million overall, and then another $60 million since 2014 as sunk costs. So in the event that you go bankrupt or something really strange happens with the economy, how can we be assured that it's going to get cleaned up like Benson did not?
So the cleanup, as I said, is part of the CUP, and well, if Shell Oil goes bankrupt, I don't know. That's what would have to happen, basically.
Shell could sell Nate.
Completely correct. And I mean, it's very difficult for me to. I mean, it's in the process and it's written down, but you're completely. And this is also always the challenge, right? And the thing is also the question with the farmer: what happens if someone dies tomorrow, or someone goes bankrupt tomorrow? And I mean, there are things that are outside our control.
And you had said that you're different. You haven't had any facilities here in the United States. But there has been lots of digester failures, and you had mentioned that there's lots of bad systems out there. For example, in Waunakee, it was the first of its kind in Wisconsin. It was touted by supporters, including Dane County officials and city councils, for generating electricity. You have gas, not electricity. And it was supposed to be limiting the excess cattle manure and reducing emissions from greenhouse gases. The $12 million system, financed with $3.3 million in state funds, has fallen short of expectations. In 3 years, pipeline breaks have caused 3 manure spills totaling more than 400,000 gallons. In August, an explosion of methane gas knocked the roof off of one of the digesters, sending smoke billowing into the air. So as far as financing goes, you are planning on using Waltz's funds, and then also the funds from the infrastructure bill for Biden's green energy hullabaloo.
No, so as I said before, we do not plan to take anything from the Inflation Reduction Act. And as goes of other, I mean, I will not defend other people's horrible projects. I can only defend good projects that we do.
Sure. So Shell Oil has a cracker plant, and Shell now owns you, and you're well aware that the Danish regulations are very strict compared to the United States, and we don't have adequate protections, which is something that you stated as well. Shell Oil exceeded its rolling 12-month emissions limit on volatile organic compounds from October 2022 through last month, and exceeding rolling limits of nitrogen oxides and hazardous air pollutants from December 2022 through last month. And there's respiratory issues and all kinds of things. Shell Oil did not protect their community. And so how are you going to protect our community when you know that the United States doesn't have the correct or the best regulations like you do have in Denmark? And then also, we also know that the MCPA does not protect us as well. Big thank you to Mark for being a whistleblower. you're well aware that we aren't protected by the MCPA, but you can't say that because you just received a settlement last November for, was it $149,000 from the state of Minnesota? Okay.
I could say anything I want about that.
Oh, okay. So do you feel that they protect us adequately?
No.
When we're looking at new projects like this?
Well, as far as the underground storage tank program that cleans up old gas stations here, the state is doing a horrible job with that.
Yeah, and we were poisoned for 4 years before the public was really notified or it was taken care of.
Yeah, this is an old leaded gasoline release, so it would have occurred prior to like 1980.
Yeah,
probably many years before that.
Yep, I think it was 75 to 80 or something like that. I might be wrong on those dates. And the contaminated soil is still there.
Yes.
So they have failed to protect us still.
That was my allegation in my lawsuit. Yeah, you can look it up online and just Google my name. You can find it anywhere.
Yeah, you did a lot. They also failed protecting us in Monticello, like the Monticello Becker nuclear plant. They had a leak and it happened for 4 months before the public was notified. So what will Shell Oil do as far as if there is issues? Are we going to know about it? Are you guys going to go tell us outside of Shell Oil, or are you going to just kind of sweep it under the rug?
So that was one of the things that didn't come up also when we talked about the above ground storage tank design, is there is a lot of leak detection involved with that. There are inspections of those tanks that are required every 5 years, I think, under API, where they actually have to empty the tanks. Somebody has to go inside and measure the thickness of the metal on the floor and all the walls and make sure everything's still there within spec. That's all part of the things that's part of the state's above ground storage tank permit, which these guys are going to have to secure if they want to build those tanks. So that's all covered for that. So yeah, they've got really good leak detection. It'd be impossible for a leak to occur like it happened in Monticello, which I think was an underground tank or underground pipeline that they weren't measuring. It just, unfortunately, that happened.
Yeah, there's lots. I mean, there's lots of things that can happen with that. So how would you notify us, and how long would you take before you notified us? Even just throwing out legal implications and all of those kinds of things. How can we trust that you're going to protect us when Shell Oil has not protected the communities that they're in historically? In 2022, Shell recorded operation spills of 60 metric tons. Of course, we all know about the largest volume of operational spills was in 2008 when the British-Dutch multinational oil and gas company was responsible for spills amounting to 8.8 thousand metric tons.
So a few different points here. So I was on a call 2 weeks ago, I think, with 12 people from the MPCA, the people doing the regulatory stuff in our company. And the basis was that we sent them all the EU regulation and all the Danish regulation to show them what it is, how we do things in Denmark, and how it's very different from how the rules are here. And that we are very happy to, you can see how strict this is, and we're very happy to operate under that. And as I said before, I think everything should be nice, but it is also a competitive advantage for us if it's strict. For instance, this about the thermophilic reactors. All the others run mesophilic, so that means they don't kill salmonella. In EU, we have a 0 tolerance for salmonella. If we get that here, that's a competitive advantage for me, because I can run a thermophilic reactors and my competitors cannot. So in that way, we're educating them. I sent all the same regulations. I showed a woman from the EPA around in Denmark, and I sent her all the same regulations because she was very interested in that as well, and I'm hoping we're going to have a follow-up conversation. So in that way, we are lobbying in the US to have that strict regulation. I've seen enough documentaries in my life to see that Shell has not always behaved properly. I think all these projects that you're mentioning are very different in nature to what we are doing, so it's chemical factories and all that, and I'm not going to say that any of that has been done properly. The only thing we've been told by Shell sort of since being acquired is that the reason why they bought Nature Energy is they want to take the entire natural gas business of fossil and replace it with what we are doing, and they bought us because we've been successful. So in terms of numbers, we were 5 people in 2013 doing biogas in Shell. Today we're more than 500, and we got sold for $2 billion to Shell. So from 0 biogas to $2 billion net worth in 10 years. And that is the reason why Shell bought us, right? They want to make money off of that with the way we've done it, and it's been successful. If Shell chooses to do something horrible in 10 years, I cannot say anything about that. Basically, I just got acquired by them. I actually don't know. I think you maybe know the company better than I do, basically. We operate as an independent subsidiary of them. We decide how we do it. We design this. Everything is done the way it's always been done in our company. But I acknowledge all these things. I've seen the documentaries as well, and things has happened over the years that should not. And I completely agree that you don't have the same protection as we have, and that's why we're lobbying for strict regulations here.
So if the MCPA and the federal government says that your regulations have to be right here, but in Denmark it's way up here, are you going to build it way up here, or are you just going to do the bare minimum?
With everything we're planning is exactly as if it was in Europe. We are not changing anything. In fact, actually, because we're building the stacks higher here because we are closer to cities. So we're building more than twice as high to make sure that nothing would annoy you here, that it just goes far away.
Yeah, but what goes up must come down eventually.
Yeah.
You know, it's still gonna
and
come down.
So what comes out of that ventilation stack, even though it's been cleaned, if that came out at ground level, even though none of it was dangerous, there would be something you would smell. So it's not a matter of dangerous chemicals, it's a matter of what comes out of that stack, even after cleaning, has a smell to it. So you want to get it up and get it mixed up in the air.
Yeah.
And
it doesn't always, you know, you can't always smell toxins and see them.
Completely agree. That's why we have our gas measurements.
Tor, can I follow up on that answer for just a second? Because I had somebody asking me this last week, which is, I know from our discussions, the stack is tall enough based on your wind studies to disperse into the atmosphere. But one of the things we're seeing with climate change, especially in the recent weeks, is things settling lower into the atmosphere than they used to. And with the ozone and the air quality alerts that we had 2 weeks ago, this was prevalent on some residents' minds. So I think you just kind of answered it, but would you mind just maybe saying it again so that we know we've got an understanding of the answer of how will you address and mitigate sort of the what goes up must come down sort of thing as we look at a changing climate. This is common for the mayor to talk over me.
He enjoys it.
So all the air permitting is done according to all the regulations to make sure that we follow all the regulations basically. I can just say that all those data I showed you on. Sorry, the guy controlling it. Can you go to the odor one? I think it's the next one. Yes, yeah, this one, right? So this is from this one, and we are smaller than that, and you can see instead of an 82 stack, we'll have a 197 feet one. So, I mean, this would get much more dispersed than what you see here. And as I said, in Denmark, if there was a house inside the red circle, that would be allowable under our regulations in Denmark. If it was out in the countryside, because I think it's because of the manure and all that, there's actually in Denmark you can smell more outside the cities. And if it was in like a neighbor that was inside the city, you could put the house between the yellow and the green, basically. And that would be permissible. So these are very low numbers.
What is the smallest head count of cattle that you'll pick up for?
They have to have enough manure that we can pick up 1 truckload every week, and I can give you.
Like
I give the.
50
I think
cows
it's
or 100.
Sorry?
Is it like 50 or 1,000?
I think it's 40 or 50, something like that. It's in that. I can give you the exact number. I can do that together with the calculation. I think we'll just put it on the website because then you can all see it, right? I think it's in the 40 to 50, but it's 1 truckload a week, and the reason why we wanted that size is because if it stays at the farmer too long, then the methane starts getting out of it. And I mean, our business model is to take that methane, right? So if it's already evaporated, it did the harm to the atmosphere, and there's no money for us. I just want to say with the MPCA, what we also shared with them in Denmark, every year we have to tell the regulators everything we put into that plant all year. At least one time a year, they come unannounced and inspect every one of our facilities. And the MPCA, because we talked about one of the facilities where, well, they did the permit and then they never saw that site again, right? In Denmark, after we get the permit, every year, at least once a year, we'll be inspected unannounced.
Are you willing to disclose that? So in Denmark, the natural gas price is 39 cents. In the United States, it's 6 cents. We like our dinosaurs.
The most of the value comes from the credits.
And some of the risks associated with biogas plants, fire and explosion, which I don't think that this is going to be a problem with fire and explosion.
Mm-hmm.
Confined space hazards, risk of wow. There you go. Risk of gas poisoning, H2S and NH3. Do you have those on site? H2S and NH3?
Yeah, contained, but that's why everyone who walks around on our site has a measurement for H2S. So if there would be a leak that we didn't know, then we run away and get everything shut down. But I mean, we are there, we operate this all the time. It runs 24/7, everything is monitored. Everyone who walks around has a gas detector inside every building. Everything gets sucked out to the ventilation system that cleans out all this stuff.
And then in Europe they use... Okay. And, well, I'm going to introduce you, Matt, right? Yeah. So you're on the Nature Energy payroll, and then you're also chair of the Soil and Water District, right? Yeah, yeah. And it's not a conflict of interest? Like Karna said, no shit. You're gonna take the microphone away from me?
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Hello? There we go. So I have a question for you guys about law regarding the security of your facilities that you may not have in Denmark. As we know, America's a little bit more of a edgy, more politically charged environment right now than say Denmark is. In the early, I think it was the early 2010s, America passed an anti-terrorism reduction and something, it's a big long name. Basically what it required is earthen berms, concrete barriers, razor wire fences, those type countermeasures to be in place at any type of energy facility. A friend of mine is the head of security for the Coke refinery down in Inver Grove Heights. They're fully armed with anti-aircraft provisions and all kinds of other things. Obviously, they're producing petroleum, not natural gas. But what type of standards do you guys have to comply with to not be a terrorism target? Because that gas main you're hooking up to for distribution that runs up to the Twin Cities, is that 10 or 14 inch diameter? We're talking a large volume. Oh,
it's 3 inch, and your connection from Northern Natural is 3 inch.
Just 3 inch.
3 inch, and what is it? I can't remember the PSI. I think it's 650 to 900 PSI, depending on the season.
Yeah, it sounds about what I remembered. So my question is, do you guys know what countermeasures you have in place, and how fortified are you going to have to be within the Painesville community to fall in line with that previous legislation?
So our Danish engineering team we did all our standard layouts, and then it's Wunderlich Malik, a local engineer here, that translated so it meets all requirements in the U.S. If there's something specific I would need to ask Wunderlich Malik, but they're putting this, they're licensed to do that stuff here, so they are making sure that it lives up to the requirements here. That's all I can say, and if there's a follow-up, I'm happy to get into contact with Wunderlich Malik to be more detailed.
I've got one up here first, and then I'll come back down to that.
Just a quick question. I know you're talking about maybe displacing, or I guess adding 12 to 16 workers. Would that be in direct competition with our local Cenex type people, and would they be reemployed at your plant, or just an idea?
I'm not sure I understood all of the sorry.
I'll provide a little bit more context. Cenex
okay.
is the local fertilizer manufacturer here in town. And I think Jesper had commented previously that it wouldn't be competition, it'd be a partnership. So maybe if you could talk about how you'd work with Cenex and the fertilizer distribution on that end, rather than just replacing or costing them those jobs.
So the people on site is typically 6 people that are, and say they're not operating the plant, they're making sure it's being maintained. So there's a plant manager with 5 assistants, and the assistants are being trained to be the plant manager basically. So if the plant manager quits, we'll continue operation. The plant runs 24/7, is fully automatic. It's our biologists that decide what's go in and out. And then the rest of the jobs are these truck drivers. I don't know how it will be here in the US. In Denmark, the truck drivers in our facilities, they work 6 days and then they have 6 days off. So that's the way they do it. So they have like these 10, 11-hour shifts, 6 days, and then they have 6 days off. And then we create these 60 to 70 jobs in the local area, because we need, so these people that are there on site will figure out what needs to be done, and if something needs to be maintained, they can't do all of that, so they will hire local people. So we're looking to add those jobs to your local community, and that of course will add something to the tax value as well. They will have to pay taxes, right? So we're hoping to create, that these jobs will be created, not taken from someone else, but that you will have 80 to 90 jobs more here, more money being spent in your stores and all that. I hope that answered the question. I didn't get all of it. I hope did it answer it? Is there something I missed? Right. Oh, okay. Now I understood. Sorry, that other part of it. Yeah. I think we should change from using commercial fertilizers to something more sustainable. That being said, there's a lot of farmland here, and we will not be able to provide the needs. We cannot replace all the commercial fertilizer here. And I think maybe, Matt, you can allude to that, how far away we would be from that?
Yeah, certainly our intention isn't to put any fertilizer plant or anyone out of business like that. And there's still plenty of other opportunities for local farm supply cooperatives to provide services. We don't have any crop protection products. There's lots of other ways. And again, there's more land in this area that we can't. Our digestate will not cover all the cropland. It just isn't gonna. They're still gonna be selling fertilizer. Maybe just to mention our R&D stuff in Denmark. So this fiber product we do in Denmark, we've done these tests where we make these pills that work as an excellent starter fertilizer for corn or for onions and for all that. And we would not, we are not a fertilizer selling company, so I think that way we could do business together. Maybe one thing I want to add on top, if some of you have looked at our Danish plants in Denmark, we are very high on capital O organic food. Around 30% of everything that's sold in Danish stores are capital O organic, and therefore they also need fertilizer. They cannot buy commercial fertilizers. So 2 of our plants in Denmark, they run completely organic. So all manure that comes in comes from organic farming. Everything that goes in comes from organic vegetables, like grass from organic fields, organic wheat straw, all that. So everything is capital O organic. So now the organic farmer can get all their fertilizer needs, because I think as we all know, normally an organic field has a 20% less yield because they cannot get the fertilizer or the nutrients they need. And that's basically a problem, right? It's inefficient. It's not good for climate change to be inefficient. So we are very, very much helping those in Denmark as well. Yeah. The other thing is those nutrients already exist in the area. The manure, the D-lactose whey permeate, if that's what we were to get from the Ampi plant, whatever. Those exist today. We're not bringing in new stuff from, hundreds and hundreds of miles away. So those nutrients already exist. So,
Bob, we had one back here.
Thanks. So the energy collection out of for biogas is a changing technology. So is there a possibility for you to adapt what you're doing to take advantage of new developments in the near future?
I think our energy system is changing a lot. So to give you a little bit of that so in Denmark, we have 40% of all natural gas used in Denmark comes from a biogas facility like ours. And in 5 years, it's going to be all of it. And if you talk so in Denmark, you have one company that runs like the high pressure transmission line and one that runs the little bit lower one and then into the distribution. And what has really changed is that all the natural gas used to come out of the North Sea in Denmark, right? High pressure out, and then sort of like a tree that's sucking up water and then is out to the leaves, right? And now, because we have so many of these here in Denmark, we're basically watering the tree from the leaves. It goes the other way, and it's much lower pressure. So now we are feeding all that whole system is being switched 180 degrees, so we're feeding it backwards. And I think actually here where you live, I don't know if you have these curtailment issues. We've met that other places. I know you sit on the end of this, the 3-inch pipeline, and there's a few other cities from here. It becomes a 4-inch pipeline, and it becomes a bigger one, like 20 miles away from here. So in the summer, like for instance in Benson, it's going to be a huge advantage for that ethanol plant over there, because sometimes they can't run properly in the summer because the gas pressure gets too low because of the gas use. Now we're here. Now you're not at the end of the line. You're going to be the first city on this line. You will never have curtailment here on your gas. Never.
My question was more related to, as technology changes in the extraction of methane from waste. Yeah, there's some things like micro digestion by adding oxygen into the mix to reduce hydrogen sulfide, and things like hydrochar that is increasing the yield.
Our R&D is very much looking into that. So one part of it is our Power-to-X, where we take the raw biogas that had methane and CO2, we put in that hydrogen from the electrolyzer, renewable energy power electrolyzer, add that in. Then instead of it being 60% methane, is now between 98 and 99% methane, so no CO2 left. We're also looking at a methanol project. As you in Denmark, we're also proud of our shipping industry. We have Maersk, which is, I think they ship 20% of all the containers in the world. They have just launched their first ship on methanol. We have a plant in Denmark where we do like liquefy the natural gas, also good for the ship industry. And if you look at like first generation biogas plant, every time you put 100 carbon atoms into the plant, 36 would come out as methane. And I think no one likes a 36% efficient process, right? And if you ask an agronomer like Matt and others that we've done all this study with, the farmer, for their need, they actually only need 10 of the carbon atoms back. So we are on a mission to change that. Instead of being 36 that go to methane, it should be 90 out of 100, or they should be used for something else in the process. And this is the reason why we think we can halve the cost of producing biogas over 10 years, because we're going to go from 36 methane atoms basically to 90. And a lot of that research is online. And I guess, a lot of people are talking about Power-to-X. I don't see a lot of people like us that has a full-scale operation this year doing Power-to-X.
Relating to the skill required by the operators of this thing, you sound like everything is automated, and so computers fail and things like that. So you have standby redundant systems to take over in those kind of situations, or how is that handled?
Sorry, could you repeat it?
So you're having your entire process is automated, so it's run by computers, and I'm asking if you have redundant computers to take over. Should one fail, automatically switch over, or how do you handle that kind of situation?
So there's a lot of screens in our biogas plant. We're on the SCADA system that monitors the entire process, and everyone, there's always someone on watch, and if they're off watch, they have the phone that gets the text if something is not running properly. I don't know our fail-safe systems on the computer side. That I will have to ask someone about. But but and the people that are there to maintain it that typically have like an engineering background or like what do you call these machine engineers from like Navy school or stuff like that. So typically that kind or yeah. No, I'm sorry. It's because in Denmark it's called like it's not Navy. It's just called like I don't know. It's like an engineer from the sailing school, but it's not Navy. I'm sorry, my translation is really poor on that. But someone who was trained in ship engines, that we have a lot of. Yeah. So I think it's hard to translate this one-to-one. We don't do college just the same way. So we have unit. Oh, yeah. Well, it's nice you get paid to take an education, right? So. Yes, exactly. They will typically have a 4 to 5 year education after high school, those that operate the plant. No, that's the 6. So one is the manager, and he has 5 assistants typically, and then they're always just trained to be the next So those 5 can So all these 6 people have the same background basically. One is the manager, and the rest are the assistants. It's called.
And then. Matt, I took my microphone back, so I don't know where the other one went, but we should be passing that around for the live stream. As people
have
might have questions.
I think there's a question down here, Sean. I think there's
Hello.
a question down here.
Okay. Been a while. So you said you showed all of the liquid waste coming in, but then you said that you do bring in some solid waste. How does the solid waste get there? And then like the the stuff from AMPI, how would that get to across the creek and all of that? And then, okay, a follow-up question after that.
Yeah. I haven't planned how that AMPI, we handle the manure, so the trucks that handle the manure are our trucks and our drivers. And the rest is something that is bought or someone is paying a gate fee to give it to us. So we have some places where I've been very close to someone. We put in like a pipeline. Like in Denmark, we have some food waste collected very close. You just put in a pipeline and pump it. I have not talked to AMPI about this stuff. I will happy to have the conversation. I expect it will just be a truck that or whatever how they would do it that go from there to us. But I have not had that conversation at all with them. The other stuff you talked about, like the solid stuff, like for instance turkey litter and what we call bedding pack or deep litter. I don't know if you saw in that video there was this yellow crane that was over. Yeah. So in Denmark most of the cows are on straw. That's why there's a lot of that. So here there is some cows here on straw, and we'll be looking to have some more actually on straw instead of using sand, which is also maybe a resource we shouldn't use that much and spread on field. But when we put that in, we have a system that takes that in, it mixes it up with the manure, and then in that 30 to 35 day process, all that stuff gets broken down so it's liquid. Actually, for the farmers in Denmark, it's something they like a lot because that solid thing is a really annoying thing for them to spread on their fields, and they have to do that, right? So we take that solid, annoying product and turn it into a liquid that's very easy for them.
But how does that get from the farmer's field to the factory?
We hire someone with is it called a dump truck? Is it called one of these? Well, it's not liquid, right? So someone comes, puts it on a truck, drive it up, it backs into a building, and then throw it in the pit.
Okay. Is that fully enclosed too, like the liquid trucks, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think it'd be beneficial to show that because that's. And then you said you produce CO2 too, and you said that would get sent to a place like Jennie-O. How does that get sent?
So on our plant, we'll make it liquid, and then we'll put it on a truck that actually looks like a manure, a solid round cylinder, and make it liquid, put it into that, and then that will drive to Jennie-O.
Okay, and then when you said that there were 100 trucks coming into the factory a day, is that taking into account all of those, or is that just the liquid?
No. So roughly speaking, the 60 are the liquid and the 40 are something else.
Oh, okay.
So that's why on weekdays it's 100 trucks because it's the liquid plus the other stuff. On the Saturday, it's only the liquid stuff. We don't get any of these other biomasses, any of the solid, and we wouldn't get whey permit and all that. So only manure on Saturdays and nothing on Sundays.
Okay. And then you said you would do CO2 capture or not? Like from the atmosphere, not just from what's produced?
No, what we'll do on our plant is we'll take that CO2 and make that liquid, and on this plant we're planning to sell that to Genio. It could also be to someone who are making dry ice. It could be someone who wants to put it in beverages, as in Denmark. And we are also looking at selling it to people that inject it into the ground for carbon capture and storage. So much like the gas, we don't just have one off-take. This is just a variety of things it can be used for. So there are different people that would use it. You also use CO2 cooling for like refrigeration. For instance, instead of, I don't know if you've seen it, but Walmart has a lot of really bad gases in the refrigeration. So companies like them are looking at CO2 cooling because it's much better.
Okay. All right.
So you guys had stated way permeate possibly. You're from the Netherlands, so you have like countries or companies like AVH, which is way is liquid gold. So I really don't foresee AMPI. Do you have any countries or any facilities in Denmark that are actually selling you their whey? Because whey is whey protein powder. Whey, actually in Europe it's great because you guys use it way more in your baby formula. It's very expensive. You actually lose money making cheese just so that you can get the whey.
No. So all the stuff we want to put into our facility is stuff that is labeled as waste. I mean,
we'll take it, kind of thing.
Yeah,
okay.
I mean, so in Denmark, we take a lot of what is called delactose whey permeate from a company called Arla. They're the biggest co-op on milk in Denmark. They process around 80% of all the milk in Denmark. They're the Land O'Lakes of Denmark, basically. Yep. And we take a lot of theirs because that still has a lot of phosphorus. So we add that to our site. We take out the gas, and then we have that separation facility in the end to take out the phosphorus. So then we get low phosphorus digestate back to the dairy farmers. And then we take that high phosphorus one, and that's actually the one we made this starter fertilizer for crop farmers, because crop farmers typically don't have phosphorus because they don't have any animals. And as we all know, no plants in the world can grow without phosphorus.
Okay. Last thing is, I just want to commend you. You did a really good job under interrogation. I know nobody here made things easy for you, and I think you did your best to be transparent. I just want to state, though, that when you have a fluctuating rate, as you stated you did, okay? So you have a fluctuating rate into what you pay the farmers, which you're not going to give us this. You stated that. You have to put in a tarp, whatever it may be. Then you have to have someone dig it. I would appreciate it if you were transparent to the farmers when you go and try and be a salesman and say that the ROI would be in 2 years. Because I understand that, but you can't honestly say that there would be a positive ROI in 2 years if that rate's fluctuating. You're a businessman, you understand this. So that's all I'm asking for. You can't. You don't have the rate, you say every rate is fluctuating, you give different rates to farmers. Don't go up to our farmers that are local and tell them that they're gonna have a positive ROI in 2 years. You can't guarantee it for every single one, because it's different rates, it's different sizes, it's different digging.
So for each farmer we do that, so we go through that model, so that model is unique for each farmers, and it might be 1.8 or 2.2 but this is how we tweak the model, so for every farmer it ends up looking the same even though they're different. So before any farmer signs on with us, they have a spreadsheet showing exactly how their financial situation will be.
So you tailor it. You don't just give them a blanket statement.
No. Everything is it's tailor-made for each farmer.
You gave a blanket statement, so that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
I got one more question. I'm down here.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
I'm the one that is the problem. So a couple years ago, we had bird flu that came through and killed off a huge amount of birds. And I know in Europe that, carcasses and that are thrown into manure digesters. And it actually raises the amount of quality of gas that comes out. And so in the event that, Genio, which is now called Pilgrim, has a huge kill-off, or one of our turkey farms that's, local here, would you be able to help them with that?
We will not take any birds in there because the bones will not be broken down, and we don't want to deliver bones out in the field that will be spread. So
Okay.
we will take no carcasses, and it's one of the things we've been educating farmers about, because in the beginning, from that deep litter, we would find a dead pig in there. I've been offered dead cows over here, and I've said no every time. I don't want your dead cows.
That
So,
would be hard to get in there.
yeah, exactly.
Okay, very good. Thank you for your.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Tor. Thank you, Jesper, Matt, Bob, Mark, all of you. Thank you for being here. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I think it's especially nice that we were able to take the time to answer questions for everyone and show sort of the relationships that have been built. So again,
can I say thank you for
everyone
spending
being
your Friday
here.
night, and we will be back and do this again. So I mean, use the website, use the question again next time we come around.
Yeah. And huge thank you to Jeremy for managing everything for the tech side. We really appreciate it, Jeremy. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for being here. We appreciate the input.